Kevin and Query.
I throw, you catch. It's not that hard, okay? All right, get the out of here.
I'm going to talk a lot about drills and fundamentals.
Watch it, watch it, watch it, watch it.
On 93.5
Watch it.
and 107.5.
Boom, baby.
The Fan.
I do.
Yesterday did.
Boy, I'm glad they got as much track activity as they did yesterday because UGLY, to channel our Stephen Holder cheerleading discussion from earlier in the week, not a good-looking Friday whatsoever. Pretty ugly commute in. And 10 a.m., Jake, is that the start time? That
Correct.
ain't happening, right?
Correct.
That's me, by the way.
Until 4
Nothing
o'clock
official on
today,
that.
by the way. And I don't know if they'll extend that. They very easily could, obviously. If all of a sudden the weather breaks and it's really nice, starting at 1 o'clock and the track's dry by 3, could they extend it? They could.
I know there's not like a black and white answer to this, but how long does it take to dry that track?
That is actually a really good question. And the one thing that I've learned in the years being out there, Kevin, is that it is entirely dependent upon the moisture level in the air. If it's like a random pop-up storm where it is not an overly humid day otherwise, and there's room for the moisture to immediately be absorbed up into the air, you're looking at 2 hours, maybe an hour and 50, depending on if they've got jet dryers, etc.
Can we get you on one of those Zambonis?
Oh, that'd be so wonderful. When you're talking about days like today where there's a lot of moisture in the air and the air is thick, 230 to 250. So it just depends.
Brian Wilkes over here, Chris Wright, Chuck Lofton, Jake
That's
Query
good
over
company.
here.
Thank you very much.
Good Friday morning to you. Again, it is a gloomy start to this Friday. We will have Chuck Pagano join us at 8:30. One of the coolest events all year long. Takes place tonight, and that is the 11th annual Chuck Strong Gala. Has raised over $12 million for cancer research to the IU Simon Cancer Center. So we'll chat with Chuck. Ron Rivera coming in town for it. Ray Lewis, former Chuck Pagano player. I think Reggie Wayne, Reggie Wayne, among other Colts dignitaries that will be in attendance. So Chuck going to join us at 8:30. And Jordan Reid from ESPN. Talk a little NFL draft coming up at 9 o'clock.
Speaking of that, did you watch any of the Colts deal last night?
Yeah, with the next pick, I did. Yeah, I'm, inject behind the scenes stuff into my veins all day long. I will always say that. I said that about Hard Knocks. You can get into an argument about how much you learn and, I was expecting more. And, I could have sworn I asked a question about how much quarterback chatter we'd get yesterday, and I don't think we got a lot. Not that I was expecting much on that front, but still, just behind the scenes of, okay, this is what a pro day looks like. This is what some of the conversations in the room are like. Again, it's not earth-shattering, but it's a peek behind the curtain. So for that, it's 15 minutes that you wouldn't typically get.
It kind of set the scene, right?
Yeah. I'm good with it. Again, I'm a huge fan of Drive to Survive and Full Swing for the PGA Tour and, what IndyCar is going to be doing. Thursday night coming up here. So, nothing great by any means. I do think, to the point that Dave Knickerbocker shared with us yesterday, bless you, I do think the fact that you get that second episode after the draft where they look back on we just drafted Anthony Richardson. Let's go back to February 12th when we really broke down Richardson that day, and let's get into the discussion. Obviously, you don't get into many negatives or questions or anything like that, but that's just part of a team issued content there. So nonetheless, I enjoyed it, and here we are. I did, gosh, and this shows you that the draft has got to get here. 4:27 last night. I wake up, and they've drafted Will Levis in my dream.
Well, now here's the question.
And I was running to the podium to make sure I got to Will Levis in time.
Did you sit upright in a sweat like many Colts fans will if that's the pick, or were you like, that's cool?
I said, this sucks. Max is asleep. He did not wake me up. I need water, and I need to go back to bed.
Okay.
And I said, why isn't the draft happening? Didn't the draft used to be like right now? like April 18th. It wasn't yesterday or maybe the day before.
They know exactly what they're doing, Kevin.
The 25th anniversary of Peyton Manning's
Somebody
selection.
asked me the other day, they're like, why are they stretching this out? I'm like, why do you think? What's dominating conversation? We got the NBA playoffs going on. We got the NHL playoffs going on. Major League Baseball's underway. Transfer portal. What's dominating the conversation? You know?
I was getting Facebook memories that not only did the draft happen, but the schedule came out, and that's not coming until like May now.
Mid-May for that. Yeah, that'll be in a few
$1
weeks.
million on the line if you can guess exactly the schedule.
That's impossible, right?
What do you mean?
Predicting that?
Like predicting one teams or the entire league?
Jim Irsay has a contest. I assume that's what you're referring to, right,
Yeah.
Jake?
I mean, I can tell you how many different combinations there are because I just had to go over that in math.
Is it like a 17 permutation, 18 permutation?
Yeah, I mean, it would be 17, right?
I guess you got the bye week thrown in there, right?
I think I can guess how many primetime games there are going to be.
You going goose egg?
Well, there'll be the Thursday night game, right?
You got your. But now, are we flexing Thursday nighters, or have we gotten there yet?
I don't know. They'd definitely be a candidate to get flexed, though.
You mean not in? You mean
No,
out?
flexed out.
Chris Ballard will have his annual pre-draft press conference coming up at noon today. I know anytime you see these GM press conferences that are mandated by the league just before the draft, a lot of people are like, well, it's a worthless press conference. He's not going to say anything about the draft. I'm like, hey, have we forgotten this is the first time that Chris Ballard will have spoken since the Combine? You know, Stephon Gilmore's been traded. Paris Campbell was not re-signed. They've been pretty quietish in free agency. They've stuck with the offensive line personnel from last year. There are other topics to talk to Chris Ballard about that are non-draft related. So I actually find today somewhat beneficial. Sure, he's not going to say anything about the draft, so don't waste your time asking draft-related questions. You can ask a whole lot of free agency questions. So that will be my effort coming up at noon today. Chris Ballard's pre-draft presser.
The draft and the dream that you had about Will Levis, is that you saying that you now believe it's Will Levis and that JMV and I were right all along?
I don't know. I know it's not the way to go with radio, but I just don't have strong conviction with this. All the Levis chatter that I heard inside of that building was pre-Shane Steichen hire. So does Shane Steichen agree with that, or does he disagree with that? And how much faith do they put into that? I've heard from people I trust in that building that it's Anthony Richardson. But I choose not to believe anything. So that's where I'm at right now. It's just it's peak lying season. That's a question I'm going to ask Chuck coming up at 8:30. Like, how much do you lie?
I could see. I mean, Richardson does make sense because of although I think Levis can run too, but
Like, what good would the Colts do, anybody in that building telling people, hey, on, a week before the draft, hey, we're going to draft Levis.
Right.
Or we're going to draft Richardson. So I just choose not to believe anything, and I probably am not going to have
the
some
right approach.
Strong prediction on it because I don't know. I'd be lying to our audience and or misinforming them if I acted like I had strong conviction. So
No, probably a good approach.
that's where I'm at. I listened to you guys yesterday when I was mowing the lawn. Great. Guys sounded great. I know it's not your typical, pass the torch around the oval, but I caught you guys when it was Doug Bowles.
Yeah, that was a good conversation when Doug was in there for a while with us.
It did seem like that was a while.
Yeah.
He mentioned Roger Penske might be out there today, weather permitting, of course.
Yeah, it was, it's really interesting because here it was at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway open test. You had rookie orientation. You had the veterans out on the track. I thought everybody looked good. It's hard to know. It's really hard to know, especially this early, what teams are looking for. I think people look at it and go, oh, goodness, Newgarden and Dixon were the two fastest. Like, they're the front runners. It is impossible to know. Ed Carpenter and Renus VK. Carpenter may have sent Renus VK out and said, okay, we're going to see how your car runs and with a lighter fuel load, and we'll see how my car runs with more downforce and traffic. Everybody's working different setups, different approaches, so it's impossible to really gather where people are. The most important thing in a session like that, Kevin, all of the rookies that had to go through rookie orientation passed it, and Same with the veteran refreshers. And then, most importantly, no cautions, other than a track inspection and a slight moisture on the track. But no incidents yesterday. So, safe day for everybody.
Just the one in the pits, right? Cal Milot bumping VK.
I guess, yeah, there was. I don't even know if they cautioned for that. They reviewed it, I know.
Callum Ilot's probably, don't know if he wants to check his social media mentions.
Callum Ilott, and this is getting very in the weeds, I realize, but Callum Ilott, a second-year driver, very talented driver from England. Drove a year ago for Juncos Hollinger Racing, a small, underfunded team. He was their only driver. Had a really good year, exceeded expectation probably. Not necessarily of him, but just of what that team has done. And there was conversation that he would parlay that into an opportunity with a bigger team, a wealthier team. And he was held to his contract. Understandably, he signed it, 2-year contract. He was held to the contract. Ricardo Juncos, who is the team owner from Argentina, then signed a second teammate for him, a second driver, Agustin Canapino, who was Argentinian. And yesterday, both of them kind of had some challenges with the car, just mechanicals. Ryan Marine, my colleague on the radio network, was interviewing Callum Ilott and said, well, you know, a lot of challenges as well for your teammate, Agustin Canapino, who is learning the oval as a rookie. You know, what can you do to give him advice so that he can lean on you to help as a teammate? And Callum Ilott, and I'm paraphrasing but not by much, said, he's not my problem. I figured it out on my own. He can figure it out on his own. There's your storyline for the day.
Yeah, are they breaking bread?
I mean,
did they go down to Big Woods last night and share a?
Can you imagine
share a meal?
Can you imagine on this radio program if someone's like, you know, what about Kevin? I have no idea what he's doing. That's his problem. I talk into my mic. He can talk into his. I mean, really?
You know, one of my favorite things we did last May, and I'm looking forward to doing it again, is just, you know, myself kind of throw some storylines and just I get educated from you and in what happens over there. And one thing I remember asking you last year, and Jake, I guess it kind of falls right in line with this storyline, the whole teammates and what strategy they give to each teammate on race day is really interesting to me. You're Will Power, I'm Scott McLaughlin. We're both for Team Penske. And you get the strategy that I want. Can I not raise my hand and say, whoa, why is Will getting that and I'm not getting that strategy? I don't want to be on the fuel strategy. I want to be on the tire strategy. Or, you know, again, right. I'm speaking very novice terms here. But
no, that's good points.
That's something that is really, really interesting to me. Joseph Newgarden topping the charts yesterday. Connor Daly, you brought up Ed Carpenter Racing, Jake. They always find speed here leading into the race. The race has been a little bit of a different story, but Connor Daly second, Scott Dixon third. I remember having this driver on last year, and I was hoping you could just speak to the storyline. But Stef Wilson, Jake, sixth yesterday. You talk about a Hollywood script if he were able to, you know, really shock the world and get it done.
Yeah, Stef Wilson is the younger brother, and I believe it's either a 9 or 10 year difference of the late Justin Wilson. Justin Wilson, the 200th driver in the history of the event to lead the Indianapolis 500, Justin Wilson. Justin Wilson was one of the, I thought, most naturally gifted and talented drivers of his era, who was always with smaller teams and was the absolute quintessential Cinderella story, underdog story, not by his own, strictly because he was on smaller teams. His talent, no one ever questioned. And he won the first ever race for Dale Coyne Racing. He was so wildly popular and such a fine, and we use that term too much, Kevin. Well, he was a fine gentleman. Justin Wilson, the absolute definition of it. And I'll simply say this. I know I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but I probably told the story before. My cousin was a fan of Justin Wilson and asked me, hey, can you ask Justin Wilson if he has a race helmet he would sell to me for my office? So I asked Justin Wilson, and he said, let me check next time I'm in Indianapolis in my office and see what I have. I figured I'd never hear from him again about it, I mean. 6 months later, I get a text from Justin Wilson. Yep. You know, like he remembered, which was shocking. Hey, I've got a helmet here if your cousin wants to buy it. So we arranged for me to go pick up the helmet for him and what the price was. And so I go to pick up the helmet, and I said, well, my cousin is just going to have me bring over a check. This was like pre-Venmo days, basically. And Justin Wilson says, well, just have him make it out to the Dyslexic Association, the Association for Dyslexia for Indiana. Justin Wilson was dyslexic. He was assigned in that capacity during one of the community days to go and meet with children who are dyslexic. And he didn't just do it once. He came back and did it every single year and knew all the kids. They all had his email. He kept in touch with them. And anytime there was an opportunity to raise money, he did it. Stef Wilson carries that same grace about him, that same gentlemanly approach, and just overly friendly, philanthropic nature. Wonderful guy. And has just kind of knocked on the door, not only of trying to get rides, but also to show that he is more than just Justin Wilson's little brother. He was leading the race a handful of years ago, late in the race, needed an extra caution to get fuel to the end. It didn't come, so
that was
he
the
had to
100th,
shuffle
right?
back.
When Rossi won it?
No, it was. I think it was the 100. I got to think. It was the year, I believe, that Power won it. It was 18, so it was the 102nd. He and Jack Harvey were running up front. They had to pit late with like 4 laps to go. Didn't have enough fuel, but it was pretty awesome to watch him lead the race late. But so he gets another opportunity, had a brake failure, and then this year signs on with Dreyer and Reinbold, kind of ironically filling the seat that was vacated by Sage Karam's departure. And Sage Karam, at no fault of Sage Karam's, was the accident that fatally injured Justin Wilson. That was Sage Karam that caused that accident. So an odd and kind of almost cruel coincidence there. But so Stef Wilson yesterday, 4th fastest for the majority of the session. I think he ended up in the top 6. But just a solid run, and teaming now with Ryan Hunter-Reay, who also looked good yesterday. So good story for both those guys. And for Stef Wilson, if you are a race fan, or excuse me, if you're a sports fan that doesn't know a lot about the Indy 500 and you're looking for a rooting interest, there is your reason to pick somebody and say, I'm rallying behind that guy and rooting for him. Stef Wilson is as good as any of them.
Yeah, I enjoyed chatting with him last year. The story really speaks for itself, so appreciate you sharing that. We'll keep you posted, weather permitting. 10 a.m. Is when things are supposed to get started out there. Again, looks a little dicey at this hour
Yeah.
if that is going to take place on time. Last night in the NBA, the 76ers go up 3-0. Tyrese Maxey is very good at basketball. James Harden ejected in the second half. Maxey handled things down the stretch. The 76ers about ready to advance to the second round. You had Golden State. Jake, you were all over that. A rout by the Warriors, correct?
That was my prediction.
That.
Were my words not lock it in? I can't remember how.
It in. Did you see Kevon Looney, by the way, last night?
Did not.
Kevon Looney, an ode to maybe some people out in the Bay Area. 4 points and 20 rebounds on 420.
He's now the most popular player.
If you were in college, you'd think about the NIL deals that could be rolling in for Mr. Looney.
Rolling, keyword
with
there.
that one. Yes, yeah, very well done there. The Warriors, much needed. They now
I don't understand. Kevin keeps talking about the April 20th. I'm confused.
2-1, the Kings lead over the Warriors in that series. And late last night, the Suns beat the Clippers. Devin Booker, absolutely outstanding in that one. He had 45. No Kawhi Leonard for the Clippers. Norman Powell, obscure 40-point playoff games. How about Norman Powell with 42 last night for the Clippers? Saw ESPN threw the stat up there. First time in NBA history that the postseason has produced back-to-back nights with a pair of 40-point games.
Really? The first time it ever happened?
I believe they said last night was the first, right?
No, I'm sorry. The first time it ever happened where 2 teammates had 40 points in the same playoff game.
Oh, well, this wasn't teammates, but I have no idea the last time.
The first time it happened for 2 teammates, I should have clarified there. In the same game in the playoffs, Jalen Rose and Reggie Miller.
40? Wow. Gosh,
40
did they
each.
even score that much back then?
Yeah, 40 each.
And how about the obscurity in the guys that have scored 40 points?
Oh, I remember
Devin Booker, Norman Powell,
Yeah.
Jamal Murray, and Anthony Edwards. I mean, obviously, Edwards and Booker, extremely gifted scorers.
And that's
Even
what's
Murray,
funny, right?
but-
Like, Anthony Edwards is a really good player, but, you don't hear about him because he's...
Yeah, this isn't Giannis, Embiid.
Correct.
Whatever, even Jokic. So, tonight, it will be Boston as that series now shifts down to the ATL, 7 o'clock tip They're up 2-0 over the Hawks. The Cavs and Knicks, that series even at 1. That'll be Madison Square Garden at 8:30. And the Nuggets looking to go up 3-0 over the Timberwolves at 9:30.
You know, when we were talking about good matchups, I can't remember if we said this one or not, but Phoenix and the Clippers is a pretty good matchup.
Well, and then the Kawhi Leonard injury just came out of the blue. Again, no Paul George all series, so really good effort by the Clippers last night to stay as competitive as they did without Kawhi, but that goes without saying how much they need him. Leonard was terrific in the Game 1 win that they got on the road, but now Phoenix up 2-1 in that series, so kind of approaching, teams like Philly and Boston, and you got to think Denver. I mean, it looks like those teams are going to advance. I do find it interesting. You look at Giannis missing a game already, Ja Morant missing a game. Not to say Draymond Green is in the same category, but Draymond Green missing a game last night. Jake, those are opportunities for the opposing team to kind of step on them, and Miami couldn't do that with Milwaukee. The Lakers didn't do that with Memphis in Game 2. And last night, albeit on the road, Sacramento did not do that to Golden State. If you let those types of teams hang around and get healthy, or in Draymond's case, just behave, who knows?
The Lakers are probably the most egregious of missed opportunities amongst those, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
By the way, Mark, I believe, are you the one that took the Tampa Bay Lightning?
Mm-hmm.
Well, rough night for you.
It's okay. I take the underdog.
How'd my abs do?
I'm like Kevin, who took the defending Stanley Cup champions.
I mean,
the Leafs 7-2 winners over the Lightning last night.
That's okay. Still 7-game series.
Series tied at 1. But by the way, winning team, 7 goals both games.
Yep, I know.
It's eternal optimist, Mark Dykton. I think if that was the Blackhawks, you might have a little bit of a different feeling about that.
Avs a 3-2 winner over the Seattle Kraken.
Shows you how much, and by much I mean little, I know about hockey when I was ripping Mark for riding the coattails of the Lightning, and I take the defending champ.
Oh, you're such a front runner. Give me the Avalanche, though.
Again, I've been to 2 hockey games in my life. One, the Coyotes. I don't even know if they're still in existence. The other one being the Avalanche, so that's why I went with that. I saw something, we were talking about the A's moving to Vegas yesterday. I saw a wild stat, and this goes to show you about just gambling being prevalent in sports now. How things have changed for the city of Las Vegas in the last 10 years. You've gotten the Golden Knights hockey team. You've gotten the Raiders. Supposedly, you're going to get the A's. I believe they've added a WNBA team.
The Aces.
From an event standpoint, Pro Bowl, Super Bowl, NFL Draft, Final Four, and an F1 race. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the college football national title is about to go there, too.
Yep.
If you want to know how much things have changed.
I mean, look at that.
This has been years ago. I don't remember the years.
Taze is on the Avalanche, Mark?
No.
Did I just see that? Toews, isn't that him?
Oh, that's not Jonathan Taze.
Oh.
Years ago, Shannon and I went to a wedding in Las Vegas.
His brother Chris.
It's been so long ago that the person that got married, I think, is now divorced. Think about this, Kevin. When we went to Las Vegas to go to a wedding, we stayed in a separate hotel because it did not have an attached sports book. And she had a family member working for a professional sports team, and they therefore did not want her staying in a hotel that had a sports book in it. That's how sensitive wild. Sports teams were about Las Vegas. It was like, and then now it's like, and I get it. I mean, it's a great market, and it's a fast-growing market. And if you've been to Henderson, Nevada, which is basically like it's Las Vegas without the Strip. Henderson is,
it's a nice suburb. My family's got some
totally,
out
and like you would never even people that live out there. Like, yeah, I go to the Strip when people come in town. You know what I mean? So there's a whole different lifestyle of living. If you live in Las Vegas, it's entirely possible that you go to the casino like twice a year.
It's like living in Nashville and going on Broadway.
Correct, which is fun, by the way.
Do you know how many people were there for the NFL draft that one year?
650,000. I had someone tell me that, Kevin. I know you're teeing me up.
We got to hit a break, don't we?
650,000 people at the NFL draft. That's a dumb. Is the NFL draft massive? Of course. But don't There's no reason to lie. You get 50,000 people there. There's no reason to say it's 650,000. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Kansas City this year, right?
Yeah, 1 million people going to be there.
I can't wait for those figures to come out, and Jake will just rant for 20 minutes the next day.
It's the dumbest. The fact people fall for that.
I can't tell you how mad I was last night waking up at 4:27.
How mad were you to wake up and your blue check mark was gone?
A dream, Bell. Well, I haven't had the blue check mark in years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I changed Twitter handles probably 6 years ago, and I haven't had it since. What am I don't get the craze. People are like, oh, my gosh, there's going to be so much false news reported. I'm like, just click on their profile. Do they have a lot of followers? It's not like you lose the followers.
I get it, but I do kind of understand.
Like a fake...
From a news standpoint, from a personality standpoint, who cares? But
like a fake Joe Biden account, okay, does it have 1 million followers or 1,000? If it has the 1 million, that's the president. If it has 1,000, it's not.
The thing that's funny to me, though, is now it's like you would almost be embarrassed if you have a blue check mark, right? Because it shows like you're actually paying.
So you had one and it went away?
Correct. I think everyone's went away. The only people that have one now are people that paid for it.
Unless Elon paid for it for you, which he did for a few people.
He did for LeBron, right?
And Stephen King.
Donald Trump's he took away, which I found interesting. Although Trump doesn't tweet anymore because he has his own account or his own platform.
Yeah, I've been naked with a blue check mark for a while.
Excuse me?
At least you updated your profile picture. That was a nice change of pace.
I did do that. Yeah, Maddie was adamant about that. It took a while. I had some reluctance on that, Mark.
To retire.
I'm a big visual memory person.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm sure you have your Facebook account. You can always pull that up and look at it if you miss it.
You're the one that print off pictures from that and post them up when I'm doing the show remote.
The YouTube stream's a big hit. People need to see you guys whether you're here or not. If I have to use a bunch of ink at the company's expense, damn it, I'll do it.
I love the YouTube stream audience. All right, Greg Rakestraw at 8, Chuck Pagano 8:30, 9 o'clock Jordan Reid, ESPN NFL draft analyst. For those thinking or preparing about going out to IMS today for the second oval test here, look outside. Don't believe we're going to be starting at 10 a.m. today, but we'll keep you posted on that front. Kevin and Query here, rounding out the week, 93.5, 107.5.
Tickets at IMS.com.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
It is becoming a morning tradition, not just whether or not we can see the Riley Towers, which I think you can see them right now, right, Kevin?
Yeah, a little cloudy, honestly, some remnants of 420 potentially around the towers this morning.
I don't understand. But one of the other traditions is Mark being able to play the Reds soundbite. Because the Pirates last night over the Cincinnati Reds, 4-3. That's a matchup.
Are you going to abandon being a Reds fan? Are you going to abandon following this team?
That's 3 straight losses.
Rematch of the 1979 NLCS, by the way. I have no idea why my brain goes there.
Well, where are you going to go?
Apparently there. Dodgers over the Cubs 6-2 yesterday. It was the Rockies over the Phillies 5-0. Padres over Mark's Diamondbacks 7-5. What I did notice, Arizona Diamondbacks now 11-8. And our push for PBR, cute fella, the Baltimore Orioles 11-7. Half game advantage, yours truly.
Okay.
You didn't mention my A's.
They were idle.
So they didn't lose.
I think they still lost somehow.
Memphis Redbirds over the Indianapolis Indians 6-1 yesterday.
Last night in the association, you saw the 76ers go up 3-0. Boy, Tyrese Maxey, I feel like he had great games against the Pacers last year, so it kind of resonated there, but he had some big-time moments late last night with James Harden ejected in the second half. So the Sixers about ready to sweep the Nets. The Kings, they do not go up 3-0. The Warriors dominate Sacramento at home in that one. And then the late game last night, Phoenix, they go on the road, go up 2-1 over the Clippers. No Kawhi Leonard for L.A. in that one. Devin Booker had 45 points. Norman Powell had 42 for the Clippers. But Phoenix wins 129-124. Looking at tonight's slate of games, you'll have 2 in the East. That'll be the Celtics at the Hawks. That is 2-0 Boston lead. The Cavs at the Knicks. That series is knotted at 1. And then the final game of the night will be the Nuggets at Minnesota. Denver up 2-0 in that series.
Are the Hawks the most obscure franchise that's decent in pro sports? Like, aren't they just like, okay.
Gosh, didn't they make the finals of the Eastern Conference a few years ago?
Yeah. But they're just like, yeah, okay.
Well, wait till they get Mike Bray on the sidelines.
Kevin's going to be slapping the floor. Yeah, Mike Bray, you tell him.
That's suddenly going to be the difference maker for you?
Went to the Bulldog last night with the family and saw listener Bobby there, and Bobby said, "Oh, wow, you have your shirt on. I wasn't expecting that."
Hi, Bobby. Let me introduce you to my wife and kids.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a bit awkward.
By the way, in the Stanley Cup final yesterday, Toronto over Tampa, 7-2. That knots things up at a game apiece in that series. Now 2-0. The Rangers over the Devils, 5-1 was the final in that game. Kevin's Colorado Avalanche tying things up with Seattle. They beat them 3-2 last night. And the Golden Knights of Las Vegas, that the only person I know that roots for the Golden Knights of Las Vegas besides my cousin Brad, Tony Donahue, strangely a Golden Knights fan, one of the 19 teams of which he's a diehard. 5-2 over the Winnipeg Jets. That series also tied at a game apiece.
Speaking of Tony Donahue, Jake potentially over at IMS today, 10 a.m. when things are supposed to get started, weather permitting, and we say that because look outside. You guys are 10-1, did I see on Sirius today?
Yeah, so we're actually on until 4. 4 o'clock is when things are scheduled for, so...
head to the IndyCar app then for that, right?
Correct. SiriusXM and then the IndyCar app, IndyCar.com. But if there are no cars on track, we'll wait until there are cars on track. Tentatively, the schedule is until 4 o'clock today, but I think they could extend it if the track clears up because I think the morning is going to probably be a wash, but we shall see.
I told you I was listening to you guys while I was mowing the lawn yesterday. I thought I heard Doug Bowles correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this. Ticket sales for this year's running better than last year.
Correct.
Which would mean outside of the 100th, that's the best we've had since the turn of the century?
Correct. He did say that. Which is good, right?
Very impressive. Very impressive on that. And Joseph Newgarden top on the speed charts yesterday. Connor Daly, second. Scott Dixon, third. You forget last year how much Connor Daly, Jake, for the first 100-ish laps was a legit candidate.
Yeah, he was a player
in that one. All right, we come back. We'll talk some Colts draft again. A dream that, nothing against the prospect, but not that I wanted to have last night. Colts quarterback related. Chris Ballard going to meet the media at noon today. We'll talk more about that on the other side. Kevin and Query here on an overcast
Inquiry on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Jake, we'll hear from Chris Ballard today at noon. Anything you are curious about on that end?
Linebacker? I don't expect him to answer that, but, how much does he have to look at that? I guess the question I would have would be this. Were you hoping to have more clarity on your linebacker position than you have? Because would that take one of the pieces that you were hoping to spend elsewhere? Does that make sense? Yeah,
that's interesting. I think if and when they draft a linebacker will be pretty telling next week. I also am curious this, Jake. Do they know?
Yeah.
It's April 21st. With Leonard, I don't know if you have a gut feel, and obviously you have medical records that we certainly don't. But I don't think you truly know with him until he gets on the field and really starts to ramp it up. And he mentioned earlier this week that, again, he's not doing running right now, things like that. I think that would be a question that I would have. I remember asking him at the Combine, do you feel like the offensive line issues from last season were personnel-based or something else? And he just kind of played both sides of that answer and didn't really commit to anything. Well, we're a month into free agency, and so far, not one personnel move there. So maybe he says it is more coaching,
right,
based off just action. So I am curious about that. And then on the Stephon Gilmore front, I don't know if he'll say it or not, but did Gilmore request that trade?
I guess when a player requests a trade, you try to honor it just because what are you going to get out of a player that doesn't want to be there? But it felt to me like Stephon Gilmore, they actually were just trying to do him a solid. Maybe that's me being overly rose-colored glasses about it. But
I think you're onto something. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you're onto something. And corner, we talked about it earlier in the week. I believe that the draft should be about supporting the quarterback at all costs. But corner, if you looked at a Colts depth chart right now, it's glaring. It's easily the most glaring sort of position. I do think something to keep in mind about this draft, Jake, and certainly future drafts, and there's no way to say this without it being a shot at Ryan Grigson, but I thought one of just the more damning parts of the previous era, and I guess we will have Chuck Pagano on at 8:30 to potentially chat about this, but when you look at how great that 2012 draft was, not just Andrew Luck. I mean, Dwayne Allen had a really nice couple of years here. Coby Fleener was a fine player here. You wanted more out of him, and sure, but he was fine. T.Y. Hilton was one of the best draft picks in Colts history when you think about where he was drafted and the level that he played at. A late third-round pick turning into a Ring of Honor player is a pretty dream scenario for you. Vic Ballard had a nice couple of years. So you did a really nice job in supporting Andrew Luck with that 2012 draft. But then as soon as 2013 occurred, you swung and missed, and you swung and missed, and you swung and missed. I mean, we're talking whiffs like, it's the first year of Dad's pitch, and you've got the 9-hole hitter up, and he's just, Was
that the Hugh Thornton draft?
Well, 2013 was Hugh Thornton, Colin Holmes, Trent Richardson was, that was a Trent Richardson pick, or was that maybe 2014? Bjorn Werner in 2013. But all the drafts, 2013, 14, and 15, they all were various types of whiffs. Obviously you had T.J. Green thrown in there. You had DeJon Smith thrown in there. And it's not like these guys ever went anywhere else and did anything either.
Here's the question I would have, though. Do you think, so the 2013 draft, Bjorn Werner, Hugh Thornton, Khalid Holmes, Montori Hughes, John Boyett. Now, John Boyett, you got to give him credit because he ripped his shirt off at Tiki Bob's.
Yes, he did. Mm-hmm.
And said, right. I played for the Colts.
Mm-hmm. Did not work out well.
Kerwin Williams, that was the running back out of Utah State that had the blonde hair, and Justice Cunningham, the tight end.
Mr. Irrelevant, Justice Cunningham.
And I don't know the answer to this, Kevin. You might recall better than I. Were those players that were thought of as reaches at the time, or were they players that were slotted right there that if the Colts didn't have that pick, whoever did probably would have been within 2 or 3 of taking that player. Because there's a difference there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying to you if I thought, boy, let me think back to a draft a decade ago and remember exactly where
I get it. But do you remember the
mocked.
Conversation of it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't totally. What I know is this, Jake. When you, again, had the whiffs that you had that year, and then you followed up in 2014, you trade away your first-round pick for Trent Richardson. You have a guy in Dante Moncrief that didn't work out. You follow that up with TJ Green and DeJon Smith and those sorts of guys. It's just not sustainable. And Andrew Luck kept you afloat like no other through those years. But sooner or later, it was going to bottom out. And I think that's why Jim Irsay fired Ryan Grigson when he did, because, from a pure win-loss standpoint, Ryan Grigson deserved to probably be here when you just look at the win-loss record of the Colts. I think Irsay viewed it and said, I can see the writing on the wall. We have no one on this roster, not named Luck and Hilton, that we want to sign to a second contract. No, you had no core building pieces. And again, nobody that went on to do anything elsewhere. And so I bring that up to say, yes, this draft is vitally important for the obvious reasons coming up here Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of next week. But when that rookie quarterback is playing on that contract, you've got to continue to draft well. And certainly the Polian era saw that, to where you had successful draft picks in 99 and 2000 and 2001, et cetera, and that's why you were able to achieve something. The Grigson era did not have that, and that's why I think for the last decade you've been kind of swimming upstream and trying to get back to having more kind of core in-house guys that you grow and develop and become mainstays for you.
I thought, and this is a moot point because it was a long time ago, I realize, but I do think that we can learn in sports from precedent. And I thought that the Trent Richardson deal, which is one that is very easy to make fun of here in Indy, and people talk about, oh my goodness, I thought that was a classic example of a general manager being forced into a position because of the overstep of the owner. Because if you go back and you look at that, and there is a current point that I'm going to make here. But if you go back to that time, Vic Ballard gets hurt, and Irsay immediately takes to Twitter. Griggs is wheeling and dealing. Griggs has a plan. We're going to get somebody in here, shock and thunder, shock and awe. And he's going on and on, sending out tweets saying, hey, we got this. If you recall, all the reports at the time and everything I've heard since about it is that Cleveland is the one that initiated contact. Trent Richardson, as a rookie, had his best year, statistically speaking, and did show some flash. And he was an unbelievable college player. So I think Cleveland called Ryan Grigson and basically said, look, man, your owner clearly wants you to make a splash. Your fan base now is expecting you to make a splash, and your owner, you better come with a pretty special gift-wrapped package for him. What if we told you could have a guy that was also taken in the top 3 of the same draft as Andrew Luck? And I think it forced Grigson into, because Irsay had basically taken the leverage away. Okay, sure, let's do it. And that's why I do think that in this, even though it is now draft and not trade, but Kevin, I think there's no coincidence in the fact now that when it comes to figuring out what the Colts are going to do, Jim Irsay is far more cryptic and silent. Yeah, he's basically said it'll probably be a quarterback. He sent the tweet out, but he did not hone in on, he sent no hint, no whatever. And it's draft, not free. I get it. But I do think that Jim Irsay is, as a result of that, Chris Ballard is working under a much looser rein, which is a good thing. You know what I mean? Chris Ballard has, I think, more autonomy than perhaps his predecessor.
Yeah, I think going back on that trade, too, a couple things. One, I think Irsay thought that would be Edgerrin James to Peyton Manning.
100% correct.
With Richardson,
he thought that, yes.
To Luck. And then two, Joe Banner was the Browns president at the time. Him and Ryan Grigson had a really close relationship from their days in Philadelphia, so I think that played into a little bit of it as well. And remember, Vic Ballard had just torn his ACL. And that was an 11-win team, that 2012 season. So, yeah, all of these probably great memories that Chuck Pagano wants to rehash coming up here at 8:30. Greg Rakestraw going to join us here in a few. Have we gotten any updates on things over at IMS?
No updates, but again, if it stopped right now, I mean, the track is scheduled to get underway at 10. If it stopped right now, they'd have to start the drying process, and you're probably going right at it. I don't even know if they've announced a delay to the start just yet, but invariably they will. I think what's going to happen is they're going to try to dry the track and extend past 4. That would be my guess for today.
Derek goes, one of my favorite Colts games, out hitting the 49ers on the road, Trent Richardson's first game.
I remember that.
Ahmad Bradshaw. Boy, that was one of the best wins of the Pagano era.
Richardson had like a touchdown from 2 yards out, remember? And it was like, here we go.
Yeah, that was early on in that game. Yeah, that was great. They had a lot of good wins that season, that 2013 season. They beat Seattle here. Russell Wilson, Andrew Luck, T.Y. Hilton kind of burned Richard Sherman in that game. They beat Denver, Peyton's first comeback game. Yeah, they had a lot of nice wins that year. And won a playoff game.
Did you ever go to any of the games
comeback
in Seattle? Did you travel?
Yeah, I went to, was it a Sunday night or Monday night when Jacoby started? He started a kid from Warren at center, Deshaun Bond.
Boy, I forgot all about that.
Yeah, they hung in there for like a half, maybe even 3/4. This would have been like 2017. Great environment. Seattle, I think, is right up there with Indy.
Oh, it's the best.
Great environment out there. Yeah, that was a pretty good game. I think it was Chuck's. Yeah, that would have been Chuck's final year. Chris Ballard's first year. Again, Chuck Pagano going to join us at 8:30. You got the Chuck Strong Gala tonight. Jordan Reid from ESPN NFL Draft Analyst at 9. We'll chat with Greg Rakestraw on the other side. Kevin Aquari on a very overcast and rainy
Listening to Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
8 o'clock hour underway. For those that are curious, as we had talked about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway practice day number 2, actually open test, technically speaking. Day number 2 officially now on a holding pattern in terms of the conditions at the Speedway. No big surprise there. Just out of curiosity, Kevin, we didn't mention it earlier. You will or will not on September 10th be attempting to see Pearl Jam live at Ruoff?
Ooh, boy, I'm gonna guess. Is that a Saturday?
I believe it's the weekend. Yeah, I think it's a Saturday.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess no on that end. I would assume that's gonna be a tough ticket.
One would assume, right?
I would think Pearl Jam could go a little stadium route.
When's the last time Pearl Jam played in Indy? I mean, I'm not a huge Pearl Jam fan. I respect them.
Why do I feel like they were at Lucas Oil, or am I imagining things?
Greg Rakestraw would probably know that. They seem to me, they had battles with Live Nation and I think Ticketmaster at one point, so they seem to me to be one of those Lucas Oil, or I'm sorry, like Chicago or, like Louisville, like the closest that they would come. I don't remember them coming through here. Pearl Jam fans who will throw you down a flight of stairs over Pearl Jam are probably screaming at the radio, "You moron, it was August 17th."
Will you be going?
No, I'm actually in Laguna Seca for IndyCar finale that weekend. I would go only because, I'm not a diehard fan, but I certainly respect their relevance within my era in particular. I mean, I was a freshman in college at the University of Kentucky when Pearl Jam did an impromptu and free concert on the Hill at the University of Kansas while they were driving through from like Denver to Chicago. So that was kind of cool. That was right when their first album had been released. People were like, "You hear about this new band, Pearl Jam?" So it'd be cool to see them, but I wouldn't go out of but I'm not going to be in town, so.
Yeah. Well, Max turns 1 on the 9th. Maybe we'll just have his birthday party at Ruoff.
That'd be too bad he's not turning 10. That'd be more fitting.
Hell of a time. Greg Rakestraw joins
well
us
done
now.
By you.
Thank you.
That was a good one.
Rake, you going to go to Pearl Jam?
I will, and good 10 reference. Clearly, Kevin didn't get it, but the other two of us in the conversation did, Jake, so well played by you. The conversation is fittingly on the 10th, or the concert, I should say, which is Sunday night, which means I will be there if the Colts have a 1 o'clock kickoff.
So it's a Sunday, okay.
If not, then unfortunately I'll miss Pearl Jam, but thankfully I saw them in Louisville last September.
When's the last time they were in Indy, Greg? Do you know?
Colts game?
I believe, according to people that are more experts on this subject than me, it was 13 years ago.
Okay.
So it has been a while.
And again, I'm not a diehard. Their songs come on. I'm like, yeah, they're cool. But my understanding is they're really good live, right?
They were fantastic live. And obviously, when you've been around for 30 years and everybody in a band is in their, mid to late 50s at this point, you're going to sound a little bit different. But the concert experience, they were played at Bourbon and Beyond when I saw them. The concert experience was phenomenal. I actually had tickets to go see them. I forget in Nashville or St. Louis. My wife and I are going to make like a weekend out of it. It was like the first weekend in April of 2020. Obviously, that did not happen. So, I went to so many concerts when I was in college. I rarely go now, but it's just kind of like, checking off bucket list items for me.
Right. I totally get it.
Pearl Jam off the bucket list, but I will happily go see them one more time because they were that good last year.
Now, I'm guessing, Rake, that weekend you'll be obviously doing something on the high school football-related front. I found it really interesting. I forget if it was Kyle Nedrip or who, but somehow I came across the Center Grove football schedule for this fall. They don't play a team from Indiana until week 6.
That is correct. They have 5 out-of-state schools the first 5 weeks. They still have Lawrence Central and Lawrence North on the schedule. Cathedral is still on the schedule. And Ben Davis is supposed to pop back on the schedule in week 4 next year. So since you asked, my game in week 4 will be IMG and Ben Davis on September the 8th on Pearl Jam weekend. But yes, to your point about Center Grove, I think this is going to be them at least for a little while, and it's kind of a la Cathedral, where Cathedral has almost at times played more out of state schools than in state schools. That seems to be less of the case for Cathedral now, but I think it's going to be the case for Center Grove at least for the next couple of years.
So is Carmel following the same boat here? I mean, I know we're in like a Carmel Center Grove feud right now. Obviously, they're no longer in the mix. Like, is Carmel's scheduling looking the same from a football standpoint?
No, Carmel's schedule looks much different.
Okay.
They are going to play 3 games against out-of-state schools. And off the top of my head, I think it's the first 3. So they have a series much like Center Grove does with Louisville Trinity. Detroit Cats Tech is coming back down for a second year. And then in the game where Carmel was supposed to play Center Grove in week 2, when that relationship fractured back in January, they are now bringing in Christian Brothers out of St. Louis. They're coming to town in week number 2. That was a school that Warren Central played last year, and that, much like the Cincinnati Catholic schools or the Cleveland Catholic schools like Louisville Trinity, they're very much a regional powerhouse.
CBC, baby. CBC. That's Christian Brothers. That's what they call it in St. Louis. Greg, I'm curious about this. Greg Rakestraw is our guest on the Payless Cigars Hotline. How much do you think, if at all, the answer to this may be that it's not a huge impact, but how much of a challenge do you think the IHSAA gets now in terms of scheduling and just, all factors based on the increased number now of like non-member charter schools or academies and the number of kids that are going to schools now that are no longer IHSAA sanctioned schools or waiting to be such, and as a result of that, the decline in attendance elsewhere? Has that had any impact at all?
Not really. What you have, the biggest impact that, say, charter schools have had on the IHSAA is what is being talked about in terms of changing this in terms of a number of teams that participate in a given class, and we're trying to split them equitably in the non-football sports that are class sports. So basically the guideline has kind of been, there's 407 member schools currently. There's always a couple that are going through the process of becoming IHSAA eligible, but trying to have more or less around 100 schools in each class. Now the proposal that is going to be voted on here shortly, I don't have the exact date on when it's going to be voted on the top of my head, would be to have 4A as basically, it's not going to be the top 64, but I'll get to that number in a second. Instead of having a certain number, it's going to be schools that are 1,400 and over, that's 4A. Schools that are 600 to 1,400, that's 3A. 325 to 600 will be 2A, and then everybody under that banner will be 1A. The arguments behind that is that there is a much larger discrepancy between the top and bottom of 4A than you have in either class. And what you've also had in now the 25 years that class sports has been happening is that the majority of schools that get added are smaller private or charter schools. And so there has been this rapid influx of 1A schools. And so because of that, the line to be in 1A has basically dropped from about 400 to about 280 over the course of the last few years. And so the idea is that it's more of an accurate depictor of what the level of athleticism you would often have on your teams if they do this more on enrollment than, say, top 100, next 100, next 100, smallest 100. And so that really has been the impact. There's not been, other than losing an athlete or two a year, there has not been this huge outflux of talent or member schools because they want to go like the independent academy route. I hope that makes sense.
Greg Rakeshaw's with us, ISC Sports Network, obviously Indy 11 voice, among other things. Rick, we saw Marcus Burton win Mr. Basketball by a pretty overwhelming margin earlier in the week. Yeah. He is off to Notre Dame. He's the third Notre Dame Mr. Basketball ever. Where should my level of excitement be if and when Micah Shrewsbury, I would assume, hands him the ball from day one?
Your level of excitement should be good. He is awfully quick. Now, he's a bit undersized, and again, he plays kind of a ball dominant, and he played off the ball at times this year, but frankly, he's best when he is a scoring point guard. How does that translate against the ACC? We will figure it out, but he is the clear Mr. Basketball winner. I thought there was zero doubt about that. And the best example I can give you, I don't have the exact number of points he scored off the top of my head. I want to say in the neighborhood of 20 when they played Ben Davis in the Hall of Fame semifinal back on December the 30th. I bring that up even though Ben Davis held him under his average. There were times where he was blown by their guards. And I saw that happen like one time all year, that game, because we know how good Ben Davis was. He didn't allow 60 points in a game all season long, obviously won all 33. But Burton was the one guy that seemingly could blow past their defense, maybe everybody except Mark Zachary, during the course of that game back in December. So that kid can really play. Now, how does it translate to the ACC? We'll figure out. But I have zero qualms about him being Indiana's Mr. Basketball in 2023.
One thing that I think has happened since we talked to you last, Greg, or it might have been right around that time. I don't think we mentioned it. But I did think it was cool. Zane Dowdy, who we've talked about with you, Kevin and I have talked about him. His dad's called in the program.
Pop Quizzer.
Nice guy, yeah. I think it's really cool, and it's great to see that he's staying at Ball State to play for Michael Lewis, because I'm telling you, I think that guy he is the perfect, I could see him in 3 years, upperclassman, MAC player, 25-win team. I just think,
absolutely,
nice player.
He can be. First of all, he is physically ready to play the Mid-American Conference now. That is rare. You have a freshman big that can do that. He is that kid. He has those talents, and he has worked to develop those talents. He's 6'9" and 230. He can play in the MAC immediately. Again, there are parts of his offensive game he needs to refine. A lot of things you'd say about Flory Badunga, you would say about Zane Dowdy. Again, do I think he's a Big Ten level player? Probably not. Do I think he can be an outstanding mid-major post player? Absolutely I can. And Michael Lewis, I think, has a chance of inserting him in the starting lineup as of day one.
Again, Greg Rakestraw with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Rake, shifting gears to the Colts. We're going to hear from Chris Ballard today at noon. The NFL mandates a pre-draft press conference for every GM around the league. I don't think there serves much purpose, really probably any purpose, of asking draft-related questions. But I think we forget with this press conference, Rake, it's the first time we've heard from Ballard since the Combine. A lot has happened since then in the sense of, trading Stephon Gilmore, Yannick Ngakoue, Samson Ebukam, Paris Campbell's gone. They made a big splash at kicker. They've done nothing of note on the offensive line. So I do think there are questions to be asked of him. Any of those topics stand out? Anything else kind of pop into your mind, maybe non-draft related, where he's either going to lie or not say anything?
You can always ask about the wide receiver position. You're not going to get much of an answer. You can ask about it. And again, I think Isaiah McKenzie's a nice player.
Don't tempt me, Rick.
I know you've asked this question probably 5 of the last 9 press conferences like this, so you might guess. And then Zach's asked the other 4 times if that's been the case. It's just it's part and parcel kind of the question marks we have. And again, you can say there's the obvious quarterback, even if the quarterback himself is not obvious, the position is that you're taking at number 4. But then how do you balance wide receiver need versus cornerback need because of training Stephon Gilmore? So you're right. There's plenty of questions to be asked. How many of those get answered today? I guess we'll find out a little afternoon.
Hey, Ray, can I squeeze in another basketball high school question for you?
Of course. It's your show, sir.
That'd be great if Frank was just like, no. I'm just done. I'm exhausted with those questions.
I've probably done that before. Do we have a coaching carousel? Any news at all? I mean, this seems to be the time where some guys retire or leave or switch schools or whatever else. Where do we stand with that?
So this is the biggest kind of flight of openings that I have seen locally in the years that I have done this. And I don't think it's a sign of a larger trend. I think it's just there are a lot of guys that have elected, hey, I've been doing this for 35 to 40 years. It's time for me to move on. So, guys like Bill Zick, a guy like Al Gooden, that has been filled. Phil Washington's been on that staff, and Phil has been a previous head coach at Attucks, amongst other places, so I was not surprised that he got that job. Chris Byers going back to Warren Central after being at Franklin Central for the last, I want to say 3 years, maybe 4, because Chris obviously led them to the 32-0 season, then was the head coach the next season when LC beat them in the sectional, and Warren Central flirted with breaking the state record for the longest winning streak. Just fell a little bit short of that, but now Chris goes back to Warren Central. There is a great deal of speculation, but nothing official, that Mark James will now go back to Franklin Central. He'll retire from teaching, but simply be the basketball coach at FC. But again, that's not a done deal just yet. The other one that I wanted to make sure I mentioned, because I had kind of known about this, and this was relatively well known in coaching circles, but had not been made official until this week. Al Rhodes coached at Penn, coached at Warsaw when they won the state title 39 years ago, will retire as one of the state's all-time leading basketball coaches in terms of wins. He did make it official. He has stepped down. He is retiring after a wonderful run at multiple schools, but most notably Warsaw and Penn.
I remember, and again,
turn your mic on.
Sorry. I remember, and again, peripherally, Greg, kind of passerby thing here. So my apologies if I'm late to this party, but there was this huge groundswell like a week and a half ago. I think we even talked about it, that Jeff Teague would be named the head coach at Pike.
And then there's Jason Delaney rumors too.
Yeah,
right?
and it just kind of fizzled out. Where do we stand?
Nothing on the official on the Pike front yet, and the job that seemingly Jason was most linked to was the Mount Vernon job, and again, that is a very attractive job, because of the facilities. They have wonderful people to work with, namely Brandon Ecker, who is their athletic director, and they started 3 freshmen this past year, and so they're going to be good for the next several years. That was the job that Jason Delaney seemingly was most linked with, but from what I have heard, he is not going to pursue that opportunity at this time.
Rake, I don't know. We'll end with this. I don't know if you've seen Max Clark from Franklin play baseball at all, but, in your history of high school sports, this state has produced some pretty good, first-round picks, really, from a high school baseball standpoint. It's been years since I've been to a high school baseball game. I'm just curious, what does the scene look like at those games when you have these elite prospects? Is it just no one sits in the first 2 rows behind home plate and they just, obviously it's a pitcher, you have radar gun central there. And do they talk to Max Clark after the game? The MLB draft is one of these things that fascinates me. And the fact that we've got a kid from Franklin that will hear his name called in the first 5 picks is just amazing to me. So I don't know if you have any paint the scene for me of what happens at these games.
Well, the best, because I've done a lot of high school state finals. I do some high school baseball regular season games. The best story I can give you regarding scouts is actually from a college baseball story. So you got to go back about 11 years, and Sean Mania kind of blows up after having a great summer in the Cape Cod League. And Sean was a kid that went to South Central Union Mills, transferred to Andrean, had to sit for a good chunk of a year, but then, played well in the postseason, had a Division I scholarship, had this huge summer between his sophomore and junior years, and after his junior year when he was draft eligible, and kept pitching well his junior year at Indiana State, who, by the way, beat Vanderbilt, who's number 4 in the country on Tuesday, and they're 22nd. They're really good. I'm going to have them on ESPN Plus coming up in a couple of weeks. But anyway, this is in the time when I am writing for 1070 The Fan, and so I'm okay. I'm going to go drive over and see when this kid's pitching. He's got a Saturday game. Frankly, it's a weather day a lot like this one, gray and rainy. It's in early May, and I think largely because A, they got a turf infield over there, and B, it was Mania's turn to pitch. It's the reason they played the game. There's probably about 60 people in the stands, and half of them are scouts. And apparently, Sean had been dealing with a little bit of arm issue. And it turns out this was first Saturday in May. This is the last time he threw all that season. And he ends up throwing about 5 innings and basically almost kind of like a rehab start for a major leaguer in AAA. Like throws nothing but fastballs. Just spots it. But every pitch is being clocked, and every pitch is being charted. As soon as he is pulled in the 5th inning, literally when the next guy comes out for the 6th, the entire first 2 rows of the building leave and go to the parking lot because they had seen whom they were there to see, and that's despite the fact that the starting pitcher that day for Evansville was Kyle Freeland, who a year later was the 6th pick in the draft by the Colorado Rockies. So when you ask me about scouts, that's immediately the story that comes to my mind in my head.
All right, he's out. Let's go get a walking taco and meet up. Get some nerd rope from the old concession stand. Let's go meet up in the parking lot.
I think they were all going to the Ballyhoo downtown. I think that's where they were heading on that day.
Ray, great stuff. What's on the weekend agenda for you?
This was a planned off day for me from a play-by-play standpoint. Mother Nature ensured that was going to be the case. Little Marion University softball tomorrow afternoon. They were 36-4 last time I checked their record, one of the top teams in the NAIA. And then Indy 11 soccer tomorrow night. We still have yet to score a goal in league play in April, so hopefully that can be fixed with a first home appearance by Monterey Bay out of Central California, or as Jake would call them, the Fighting Corkscrews from Laguna.
That's right. That is exactly right. That's a decent area, man.
Boy, you would like to be on the play-by-play for maybe a road call out there.
And you know what? I actually lucked into a work conference with Emmis out there about 6 years ago, so I've spent some time on Cannery Row. I would never have visited that area, and I freaking love that place. I cannot wait to go back. I was there like in early June. Apparently, I avoided most of the June gloom. It was like sunny for the first 3 days we were there. It was sunny and breezy and in the 70s, or as I would call, like exactly perfect fat guy.
Oh, it's like room temperature. You sit outside and you're like, I forgot I'm outside. You know what I mean?
No, it's wonderful. And the way the way it shimmers off the ocean. Yeah, that'd be a nice place to. If I needed a retirement soccer gig, I'd sign up for the play-by-play guy for Monterey Bay Union. Believe me.
Rake, have a great weekend, man.
See you guys.
It's Greg Rakestraw right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. Shout out here to Carson. Jake, Corey, his dad, driving him to school right now. Car line drop-off shout out.
There we go.
Fourth grader Carson.
We do one of them per morning. Good morning, Carson. Have a good day at school. Listen to your teachers.
We do an indoor recess today for Carson? Dodgeball inside?
Boy, that was the best, wasn't it?
How about the big parachute? Maybe the parachute. You can bring out the parachute today.
Chuck Belkey with some man overboard, starboard games that he came up with. Good
Corey,
times,
Carson,
man.
thank you.
Did you have
for
the
that.
little carts?
Means a lot.
Did you ever have the little carts in gym class?
Carts.
They were like, they probably don't even use them anymore. I don't know.
Little
they were
like roller flat boards.
Correct.
That I'm picturing. Is that what you're talking about?
Oh yeah, it was great. Go wheeling around those bad boys on that green tile at Allisonville Elementary. Heck
you could rev those up. It could look like yesterday out there.
It was awesome.
At IMS. Chuck Pagano going to join us here in 5. Again, the Chuck Strong Gala is tonight, so we'll catch up with the former Colts head coach. For now, Morning Checkdown.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
We shall begin with the NBA last night. The playoffs, of course, continuing in the association, and we talked about the fact that Boston and Atlanta taking place tonight, but, come on, does anybody really care? Boston's going to win that series, probably in a sweep, to be honest with you. So last night on the scoreboard, here's what took place. Philadelphia over Brooklyn, 102-97. James Harden was ejected. I did not think necessarily a merited ejection. He had 21. He was ejected for a flagrant 2. Joel Embiid had 14 points, 10 boards, as the Sixers taking command in that series. They lead 3-0. It was Golden State, as I told you exactly was going to happen, over the Sacramento Kings, 114-97. Steph had 36. Andrew Wiggins had 20. Jordan Poole had 16. Kevin Looney, as Kevin Bowen succinctly pointed out, where did you even put that connection together? On 420, Kevin Looney, 4 points, 20 boards.
I just thought it was notable. Something to note.
How in the world did you see that in the box score?
I have some sources out there that maybe were inferring or alerting me of that.
Okay, Phoenix over the Clippers, by the way,
129-124.
Suns lead 2-1.
Tonight, Jake said Celtics, Hawks, Knicks, Cavs, Nuggets, T-Wolves. That will be the slate for this Friday evening. Yesterday, Major League Baseball, typical kind of Thursday fashion, relatively quiet schedule. I wish the Reds were also, well, I guess they were quiet. They lost the Pirates.
Where are you going to go?
4-3, 7-12 on the year. The Cubs lost yesterday to the Dodgers, 6-2.
Cody Bellinger, though, hit a home run that went 420 feet.
It's interesting to know.
Smoked that ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, out in California, of all places.
Okay.
No, they're in Chicago.
Oh, okay. Well, I stand corrected there. Blowing in the wind, like some other things yesterday. Okay. Indians lost. They've lost 3 in a row, all to Memphis this week. Again, Major League Baseball will pick up today. And the rest of the weekend.
I didn't understand what Mark meant about the home run and the distance.
You had a fun dinner conversation with your mom this weekend, I think.
Jake, you said we're on hold over there at IMS?
Yeah, things right now for the day 2 of the open test for the Indianapolis 500 out of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Busy day yesterday. Joseph Newgarden, Scott Dixon amongst the speed charts, amongst the top of the speed charts, I should say. Everybody going out on track. All rookies passed the rookie orientation phase. But today for day 2, which was to get underway at 10 a.m. and go until 4 o'clock, is in a, quote, holding pattern. So we shall see what that means and perhaps if they extend it beyond 4 o'clock.
We still got one more car, right? We had 33 yesterday, but we still got one more that's
correct. RC Enerson and Able Motorsports have yet to present a car. But they have announced their intent to run, but they have yet to officially present a car.
Enterprise or Avis, they could head over there.
The airport was full because it's a one-way rental, and that's harder to get the car for drop-off purposes.
Chuck Pagano joins us next here. Kevin and Query.
Hey, it's JMV. Maintain.
.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Jake, I think you and I probably share this in that in the job that we're in, you get a lot of like press releases, or, email kind of pitches to you about, hey, let's promote this, let's do that. And oftentimes it's a pretty quick delete for me. I will say I got a press
respond
release.
to everyone, Kevin.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice personal note. One that I received probably this time last week that made me smile, and I said to Mark Dykton, we've got to get him back on to talk about this. And really, it's probably an annual smile now that has extended, and I can't believe this, post-decade. We are in year 11 of the Chuck Strong Gala, and it has raised over $12 million for cancer research at the IU Simon Cancer Center. And a huge, huge part of that, of course, is Chuck Pagano. And he joins us now. Chuck, when I saw that, I feel like I'm amazed by the numbers every year, and I just can't help but smile that this event not only continues, but you guys have done just an incredible job in raising money. So thank you for that, and good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Coach, I want to begin with this. Excuse me. As Kevin was talking about, with this ongoing effort and the incredible amount of money and awareness, that you have been able to do here with this Chuck Strong movement and now the millions of dollars raised. If you could for us, and I know that I think we've had this conversation with you before, but I wanted to rehash it. I applaud you because I myself, having gone through a health scare, at no point, the level of yours or the length of time that you went through and the efforts of your journey. But I knew when I walked out of the hospital, like I felt kind of this obligation of like, okay, now I need to inform people about what I went through and how they can be preventative. And for you to not only have that thought, but then also to be able to act on it and continue to do so for, a decade now. Can you take me back to when you first perhaps had that epiphany of the fact you had a platform and now kind of an obligation to give back?
Yeah, so it is crazy. Chuck Strong 11.0, it seems almost surreal, and that just speaks to the goodness of people. There's so much more good than bad out there. But I remember, being first diagnosed. I remember those first couple weeks in the hospital and the support that I received from, the people here in Indianapolis, the people in Indiana, the people around the NFL, friends, family, the team. I mean, I was only here 6-7 months. They didn't really know me, but the support that you receive and the letters and the texts and the emails and all that stuff, showing, encouragement, telling people about, their diagnosis, their victory over cancer, what to expect. I mean, it helped me get through it. Of course, you got to take, the treatment and have chemo and do all that stuff. And I was at the right place at the right time and had great care at IU Simon Comprehensive Cancer Center. We all know that. But then when you get, halfway through it and you say, okay, look, we're going to win. We're going to beat cancer. You start to feel that sense of what you're talking about is like, okay, these people did for me, people that don't even know you, probably the support you received, you got support from people that you didn't know. I mean, it's like, okay, Tina and I looked at each other, we get through this, we're going to pay this thing forward. And we're going to do the same for others that are going to battle, because we all know that cancer doesn't discriminate. Unfortunately, it touches everyone in some form or fashion. So it's an honor. It's a privilege. It's very humbling to be able to be here today and continuing to do this and helping others get through their battle.
I think that blueprint of the journey, Coach, is, it's individualized, right? I mean, everybody, I always tell people whenever I hear of somebody who gets that diagnosis, you do you, right? Do what's best for you. Take the journey and the path that is best for you. And I think it's important for people to know that. But for those that maybe are just entering that journey and are listening to you now, when you first, before the general public knew, before the press release, when you first got that news that you had been diagnosed, were you more scared or more angry?
Yeah, probably a combination, to be honest with you. And you always say, okay, why me? why now? You just get your dream job. You spend 28 years grinding away as an assistant coach and whatever, and then you sit down and it's news you never think you're going to hear, and you hear it to other people, but you just don't think that it's ever going to happen to you. But those emotions come flooding forward, and then I always tell the story about that last game, before I was diagnosed against Jacksonville and how we lost that game. We go in the locker room, say a few words, and Robert Mathis breaks the team down, and he says, hey, there's no pity parties in football. There's no pity parties in life. Let's man up. We'll come in tomorrow, watch the tape, and we keep moving forward. And so at that moment, I looked at Tina, and I said, okay, look. And I looked at my doctor, my oncologist, Dr. Larry Kripe. I said, okay, what's the game plan? What do we have to do, to get through this? So it's a mindset. I was very fortunate. The type of leukemia that I had, APL, was very curable. It was treatable. Like I said, I was at the right place at the right time. So you just, you lean on your faith, you lean on your family, you lean on your caregivers, and you try to, you stay as positive as you can. There's going to be some tough days, some dark days, but you keep fighting, and you never, ever give in to it. And you hold out hope, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. Research, saves lives. So raising money for cancer research is so important.
Chuck, I think about this every year when the NFL schedule comes out. I think back to the 2012 season. Like you said, it was your first year. You guys had just lost to Jacksonville. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was going to be week 4, and you had the earliest bye week in the NFL. Like, just the odds of that kind of playing out how it did is a bit surreal, at least for me. I don't know how you felt. If you don't mind, I know you've told this story before, but could you share just kind of walking off the practice field leading into that bye week when you realized, man, I think something's wrong here, and this is something that needs to get checked out?
Yeah, like you step back to your point about the schedule, when that bid came out, you're like, God damn, are you kidding me? Week 4? You want it right around, mid-season, right? Week 7, week 8, that bye week, if you will, get guys healthy, all those, reassess where you're at. And so, yeah, that was crazy that it worked out the way, because if it's not week 4, I'm not going to get checked. You're going to keep grinding, you keep moving along, and who knows if it's 4 or 5 weeks later where you're at as far as your diagnosis and where the cancer's at. So that was unbelievable in itself. And then I remember going into the Jacksonville game that Sunday. I always got to the stadium early, hang out, drink a million cups of coffee, pace the field, the locker room, guts churning, looking over your notes. And I go into the training room when the doctors arrive, and I got all these bruises showing up on my torso. So I have them take a look at it, and they said, hey, let's get through this game. We got a bye next week. We'll do some blood work and some tests. So sure enough, we, per the new CBA, you can practice like Tuesday, Wednesday, and then you have to cut the guys loose for 4 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So they sent a nurse in to draw blood Tuesday afternoon after that first practice. And then I got a call from Doug Robertson, our team physician, telling me that, hey, your blood work's a little bit off. I've made you an appointment to go see an oncologist out at Simon Cancer Center. And that's like, what? Are you kidding me? Because everybody's gone. It's just me and my assistant, James Betcher, sitting there. And then you go to Wednesday practice. Wednesday was team photo. So we take a team photo, have the light practice, and then ship everybody out of there. And then, I didn't tell Tina. I always tell this story. I didn't tell Tina. I didn't want to scare her. I was just going to drive myself down, go to see this oncologist. Everything's going to be fine. It's not what we think it is, and keep moving forward. And the training doc came down and said, hey, you need to call Tina. You need a ride down there. I said, no, I don't. Everything's going to be fine. Yeah, you need a ride. So call her. She comes to get me. Very, very quiet ride, obviously, down there. And then you sit there and you get that news. And it's not what you're expecting to hear. But, yeah, it was kind of ironic that, that bye happened to come in week 4. And like I said, right place at the right time.
Now, here we are, 11th annual Chuck Strong Gala tonight. Again, over $12 million raised for IU Simon Cancer Center and cancer research. Among the guest list will include Ray Lewis, your relationship pretty well documented. Do you have a relationship with Ron Rivera? I was curious to see that name on the list for tonight.
Yeah, when I got the head job in 2012, I've always admired, and appreciated Ron as a player, coach, head coach, everything that he's done in the National Football League. He's a straight stand-up guy. He's a good human being, great coach, but a better person. Him and his wife, Stephanie, Tina, and I had, time during those annual meetings in the spring, to hang out and kind of get to know each other a little bit better. I ended up going down and interviewing with Ron after 2018, the year I sat out. And there was a position down there that we talked about, and then the coordinator's gig came about, in Chicago, so I ended up going there. But yeah, I've always admired Ron, as a person and as a man, and then just watching him, battle in 2020 and go through a season very similar, and watching his journey, I just felt like after 2 years ago when BA came and joined me on stage with AC and kind of having that fireside chat, if you will. I thought it'd be awesome for Ron and Stephanie to join us, and for Ron to be able to have an opportunity to share, a little bit about his journey and where he's at with this whole cancer research. And he's a great advocate for it.
Coach, before we ask a couple football questions here, I wanted to touch on one other thing. And I'm going to go off my memory here, which is dangerous to do because I'm getting older, But I recall one of the first press conferences when you came, out of the darkness, so to speak, and you were returning as a coach. And you told a story about, I think it was a young kid that either had given you advice or somehow delivered to you popsicles because of the lesions in your mouth that takes place during the treatments, and they recommended the popsicles, and so you were enjoying the popsicles. But for you, was there a period or a point where you probably inevitably and understandably were feeling sorry for yourself, and then you saw someone else's journey and thought to yourself, boy, I'm pretty spoiled to be feeling sorry for myself because look what they're going through? And were there steps along the way that other people provided to Chuck Pagano a perspective and an appreciation?
Yeah, no question. Ryan Darby was the young man. He was a boy. He was a child. He's like 6, 7 years old. And he's talking about when you go through chemo, Coach, you want to chew ice because it'll help you, try to avoid the mouth sores and the sores that go down your esophagus, your throat, and things that are, I guess, just a nightmare. And he said, so chew ice, or better yet, when I was going through mine, I would get popsicles and chew those, and cherry was my favorite flavor. So, that advice, and coming from, a 6-year-old kid, at the time, yeah, it does bring you great perspective, and it's kind of a slap in the face, like, okay, because once we see somebody do it and beat it and win, it's like, okay, if he can do this, hell, I can do this. So, buckle up your chin strap, stiffen your spine, set that jaw, and battle this son of a gun. And, in my case, again, I was very fortunate and had great care from everybody at IU Simon Comprehensive Cancer Center. And so, yeah, I mean, and that's just one story. And so we're humbled and blessed to be here today still and be able to try to pay this thing forward and encourage and help others through their battle.
Did you maintain a relationship with, you said Ryan Darby, right?
Ryan, yeah.
Did you maintain a relationship with him?
Yeah, he's healthy. He's thriving. I emailed through his mom. He's probably got his own phone now and his own email address because I used to go through his mother. I would get a text or an email from her, and then I'd email back to her. It was awesome, and we sent him a helmet. He sent me this picture back, and he had this helmet on, and he doing his Heisman pose. I still, it was hung in my office until the day they let me go, and I packed up my office here in Indy in 2017. But It's somewhere in storage, and when we get our stuff out of storage in Boise, I pull that out and hang that back up in my new office once we get that thing built. But it's crazy how much you keep up with so many people like that.
Chuck Pagano is our guest. He's on the Payless Liquors hotline, and of course the Chuck Strong Gala 11.0, as you had mentioned, raising over now into the second decade, if you will, of millions of dollars for cancer research at Indiana University. I wanted to ask you, Coach, this is the time of year as you get set for the draft, not you, but teams are getting ready for the draft. Can you give us some perspective on, as you get down to the nitty-gritty, I can't imagine that there would be players that teams are unfamiliar with at this point. You've probably scouted every one. But as a head coach, was there a particular point in the draft where some players were a little bit you were vague on because you hadn't had a chance to see to that level of depth and you had to trust your scouts? And how much say when it comes down to it, how much say does the head coach have versus GM owner?
Yeah, that's always a collaborative effort, if you will. I think, probably everybody tries to manage the draft that way, and everybody being on the same page. The first part of your question about knowing everybody in the draft and the 260-plus players that are going to come off the board through 7 rounds, you're not going to know every single one of them. But at the top of that draft, obviously the first 3 rounds and then into day 3, 4 through 7, you've got a pretty good feel for most of those guys, but you have to trust your GM. You have to trust the front office people, your pro personnel guys, your college scouting guys, the guys that are grinding, the guys that are on the road. That whole year traveling around and visiting all these colleges and researching these players and evaluating these players for a lot of time. The top 30 guys, you bring in, you're going to know those guys like the back of your hand. But then it's a trust deal. Right now, everybody's finalizing their boards. They're doing, finalizing their draft meetings, and the hay is almost in the barn, so to speak. And you get your board set. It may get tweaked here in the next, next few days ahead. But then, as those names start to fly off, you trust your board, you trust your scouts, you trust the rankings and the grade that you have on them, and then you let all that preparation and that process kind of handle everything. But then, there's going to be a time where the guy that you want is sitting right there, and all of a sudden either somebody leapfrogs you, there's a trade, he falls off the board, and that's why you have a cluster. You have a plan, and you're not caught, with your pants down. But yeah, it's a collaborative effort, and it's okay. This is the pick. This is the guy, and we've got a plan to develop this kid and make sure that he's very, very successful.
Do you miss that process, or does it suck? Because it sounds like at times it would suck.
No, it's a lot. There's a lot that goes into it. You just don't watch a highlight. Get on YouTube now, and that's what I do now. Because I don't have access to all the college tapes, so I just go to YouTube, thank God, and pull up names and watch 4 or 5 clips and think I know a player, inside out. But oh man, this guy. But they're just showing you all the good.
Yeah, I was going to say. Then you realize that it was put together by his YouTube page. Right.
No question. Yeah, his handler, his dudes, his guys, his mama, his auntie, whoever, right? But it's fun. I love this part of it because it's always fascinating. It's always a thrill to see, did you hit this guy? Did you have him pegged and evaluated exactly? And there is no exact science to us. We all know how huge this draft is. For our beloved Colts, coming up, and how important it's going to be to get to hit on this quarterback of the future, this franchise quarterback. I'm assuming that's what we're going to do, or they're going to do. I don't want to speak out of line here, but it was always fun exercise to see just how close and everybody sees it different. So those discussions, going through that process and talking, through scouts, because again, everybody sees people a little bit different. So they were exciting and fascinating, process and discussions talking about these guys.
Chuck, last one, and we appreciate your time on what is a very busy day and certainly going to be a pretty fun night. This time of year, and you guys only had, really one top 10 pick during your tenure here, and obviously that was Andrew Luck at number 1 overall. So maybe it's different when you're as high as the Colts are right now in the draft order. But how much, lying happens this time of year? We're going to hear from Chris Ballard at noon today at his press conference. How much lying goes around the National Football League when it comes down to the draft this time of year?
There's some gamesmanship, being played. But I don't think you can't say much, so they're going to say a lot with revealing very little, right? And kind of be as upfront and forthright as you possibly can. You may throw a few smoke screens out there, Houston, for example. Hey, we're not dead set on taking a quarterback here or two. So you put that line in the water and see if you get any nibbles and get any bites, right? So I think that's all part of this whole deal and the draft process. It's fun. It's exciting. All of us fans out there now, love it. You love the drama of it, the history on it, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, there's some gamesmanship there. There's some smoke screens that happen, but it'll be fascinating to see how it plays out.
Of the YouTube clips that you've watched, we'll take Bryce Young off the board because let's say Carolina does take him. So between C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, Chuck Pagano, the quarterback of those three that has most impressed you is which?
Well, I think just from a body of work, I think you got to, if you can, you go C.J. Stroud, just where he played, the level of competition, his tape. He's as clean of a prospect as there is out there. Again, there's no exact science. There's no surefire. Who knows what's going to happen? But, Anthony Richardson, the skill set, the athletic ability, and his ceiling is so friggin' high. That would be a really fun deal. And Shane's offense, to see what he did with Jalen Hurts. But, yeah, so probably CJ, and then if you end up with Anthony Richardson, I know as a defensive coach, game planning and preparing to stop that guy that's a dual threat, that's a nightmare.
Will Levis, last one I'll ask you. Will Levis, your thought?
Yeah, he's a solid prospect and a really good talent, big, strong, Andrew Luck, type of, big physical dude with a cannon for an arm, can make all the throws. A great kid, a great teammate, great leader. You can watch when you watch these guys at their pro day, and you watch them during games. You look close. You want to see the interaction, And I look at Will Levis, and I look at his pro day, and I see the camaraderie and how teammates cheer for a guy. But you can tell right away whether a guy is beloved and liked and respected by his peers and his teammates just by watching those workouts. So. This guy is a fabulous football player. If you end up with Will Levis, you're getting a really, really good football player.
It's one of the best events all year in this city, and that's saying something. Chuck, congrats. Shout out to the Irsay family. I know how much they've meant to you throughout all of this. Again, 11th annual Chuck Strong Gala, over $12 million for cancer research for the IU Simon Cancer Center. Have a great time tonight, Coach. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Go Pokes.
That's Chuck Pagano right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. Jordan Reid, ESPN NFL draft analyst, going to join us here on the other side.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
1 week right now, I assume we'll be in the midst of getting ready for a opening press conference for the Colts' first-round draft pick and also getting ready for round 2 and round 3 of the NFL draft. So round 1, again, coming up on Thursday, 2 and 3 Friday night, 4 through 7 on Saturday. To get more into all of this, the great Jordan Reid from ESPN joins us now at Jordan_Reid on Twitter, ESPN draft analyst. Jordan, let's begin with probably the newsiest draft item right now and has a whole lot of ramifications with the Colts, not only based off the division, but based off the fact that they are 2 spots higher than Indy right now. If you were Texans GM Nick Caserio, Bryce Young is off the board, your team gets on the clock at number 2, you do what?
I think you have to take a quarterback just because you can say we can go into 2024 thinking that we're not going to win a lot of games, but you're never going to go out there and purposely tank, obviously. But let's just be honest. The Texans are probably not going to be a contender next year, especially in the AFC South, let alone the AFC in general. So for them, you never know when you're going to be picking this high again. So I think you have to take advantage of having the number 2 overall pick, especially when you're talking about 2 quarterbacks the caliber of Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud. So which one doesn't go at number 1 overall? You should take the opposite of that. So I think they have to take the quarterback.
So I'll play, and Jordan, I agree with you, but I'm going to play devil's advocate here, okay? With that line of thought, if you are Houston, do you entertain the notion of, look, we are not going to contend in the AFC South or the AFC, so we probably are going to be drafting high again next year. There are good quarterback prospects in next year's draft, so let's kick it for another year with Davis Mills and try to get auxiliary pieces so that next year when we get our franchise quarterback, we're that much more prepared to win.
And I will counteract that and say, what if we have the number 3 overall pick and the 2 teams in front of us need quarterbacks, and they're in the driver's seat for Drake May and then also Caleb Williams of USC. So there is no – I don't like talking in absolutes, and we can say that, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future. It could be a situation of where we put ourselves out of contention for either one of those top 2 overall selections. And let's just say one of those guys go out and gets hurt. Now, we don't want that to happen, obviously, but let's just say one of them go out and get hurt. Now, if you don't even have a number 1 overall pick, you're not going to be in contention for either one of those players. So I don't like talking in absolutes, and I don't like looking towards the future. Let's just address the now or the present. Let's get our quarterback, and how can we sell to our fan base and also those players in the locker room to trot out Case Keenum and Davis Mills, who led the league in interceptions last year, for another season. I just don't see how you can do that.
Where do you believe, Jordan Reid is our guest on the Payless Liquors Hotline. C.J. Stroud, I think, is a wonderful talent. And all of a sudden in the last week, I can't, turn around without seeing a negative story about C.J. Stroud. Any validity to any of the question marks about him, and where do you think it's coming from?
There's probably a team that likes him, and they're leaking a whole bunch of things just so he can slip, maybe. That's the only reason that I can think of. But just interacting with CJ, watching his tape, being around him at the combine, A-plus character. I think he's the most polished passer of any quarterback in this group. So I'm not sure exactly where the rumors are coming from. But that 2-week window leading up to the draft, you always hear a lot of stuff coming out about certain players. Sometimes it's teams floating true or untrue rumors out there about him just because they want him to slip. And then other times there is some validity to it, but we don't really know just because we don't have the proper information on the media side.
Again, he's Jordan Reid, ESPN NFL draft analyst. He's with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline, 6 days away from round 1 here, the 2023 NFL draft. Jordan, maybe putting the C.J. Stroud, Houston, whatever, takes to the side, what is the one kind of popular social media draft thought that you just don't agree with? It could be prospect-wise. It could be position depth. What is the one thing that you've gotten here and been like, I do not understand why that seems to be, growing and growing?
I would say labeling Anthony Richardson and Will Levis as projects or raw. I think a lot of people misuse both of those words with Anthony. I just think it's just a lack of experience with him. It's not a situation of where he doesn't understand what he's doing at the position. He shows the ability to process, see, read, and react. It's just a matter of him not having a lot of exposure to what's in front of him only starting 13 games. So I wouldn't use the word raw or project with either one of them. And then with Levis, I think it's a situation of where you just have to wonder which version of him am I getting? Am I getting his junior year version of where he looked terrific? He looked like a potential top 10 overall pick, but last year he really had some struggles with his decision making and accuracy. So I don't really agree with labeling either one of those guys raw or project.
You think Levis's flaws or Richardson's flaws are more teachable?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say Richardson, just because his is more so of a footwork issue, and he just simply doesn't understand exactly how to get his body in certain positions to align his feet to a certain targets. And he's so physically gifted, he just tries to use that as kind of a crutch at times, as opposed to using his understanding of aligning his body and then also his feet. So that needs to be coached into him quite a bit. So you're going to have some patience with him. With Will Levis, I think it's more so of just kind of questioning what he's seeing out there sometimes, especially when he throws the ball into some coverages and he has some turnovers and some decision-making issues with him.
Jordan Reid is our guest. You can follow him on Twitter at Jordan_Reid. That's R-E-I-D, ESPN draft analyst. Jordan, I'll ask you what I've asked a couple of people, but I find it interesting because the Colts have different areas of need aside from quarterback. In your opinion, this draft is richest at what position and weakest at what position?
Strongest, I would say, really three positions: running back, tight end, and then also cornerback. I think those are your three strongest positions. Bijan Robinson is the bona fide number one running back in the draft class. I could see him going anywhere from the Falcons at 8 to the Chargers at 21. I think that's probably his floor as far as how far he's going to slip. After that, Jahmyr Gibbs, I don't know where he's going to land, honestly. He could be back into the first round, but I would be shocked if he made it past the Dolphins at 51. But after that, I think there's a ton of different types of running backs in the draft class, different types of shapes and sizes. You're going to be able to find a lot of different running backs in this draft class. So I think there's going to be a run on those guys, probably late second, early third. We could see as many as 10 to 12 go in that day 2 to day 3 range. So I'm really excited to see how this running back class ends up. But tight end, I think tight end is one of the more loaded positions overall in this draft class. We could see as many as 7 go in the top 3 rounds, which is something we haven't seen in a very long time. But the weakest, I would say, is linebacker. I'm not a huge fan of this linebacker group. The top 3 you'll probably hear are Drew Sanders of Arkansas, Jack Campbell of Iowa, and then also Trenton Simpson of Clemson. And each one of those 3 are different types of linebacker. So linebacker, I think, is the weakest of this year's group.
Again, Jordan Reid is with us, ESPN NFL draft analyst. You can follow him on Twitter at Jordan_Reid. Providing some insight with us here on this Friday morning. Jordan, we asked you kind of Houston's thoughts at 2. The other team obviously would be Arizona at 3 that have a lot of implications to the Colts. You know, part of me originally thought an advantage the Colts would have from a trade standpoint is Arizona maybe won't want to move too far back because they want to still be in the range to get a Will Anderson. Let's say Anderson is off the board, though. Is there a defensive prospect? Is it Jalen Carter? Is it Tyree Wilson? Is it somebody else that you think Arizona would still want to stay in that top 4 range? Or would you look at it and say, no, we got a new GM, we got a new head coach, let's just get the best trade package possible, and we're fine with moving back, later into the top 10?
I would be really surprised if Arizona stayed at number 3 overall, just because they have so many holes and they've lost so many players. J.J. Watt retiring, Zach Allen moving on. There's plenty of other players that they have lost. Byron Murphy signed a great deal with the Vikings. So they have so many holes on that roster, and there's a strong argument that could be made that they have the worst roster in the NFL right now. And then you put on top of that Kyler Murray returning from the torn ACL. So this is a team that's not going to win a lot of games next year, and they just need to add players at premium positions. So for them, I would look to trade back. The Colts at 4 is an obvious trade partner just because you want to stay in contention for a Will Anderson. I don't think they're going to take Jalen Carter personally, just because whenever you're a new GM and you're a new head coach walking through the door, your first pick ever during your tenure is probably not going to be a player that has some character questions. So they want more so of a cleaner prospect. So Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson would be my guess if they slide back in one spot. But with the Colts, that's an obvious trade partner to me just because they want to make sure they come up and get their quarterback at number 3 overall.
Can you imagine if – well, first off, let's go back to this, Jordan, in terms of the quarterback. there are different theories out there that the Colts could be drafting if everybody stays at form. Okay, so if the Colts are drafting 4, and we know, as you talked about, Houston's at 2, Carolina's at 1, Arizona's at 3. In your opinion, at that point, the Colts will be drafting what numbered quarterback selected? They will be getting what choice?
It just depends on how they have them graded. And let's say Stroud and Young, or Young and Stroud, whichever order they go, back-to-back, 1 and 2. It just depends on how similarly they have graded Levis and Richardson.
Well, but, do you think they'll be taking the third quarterback? And I'm sorry, I should have said that. Will they be the third team to select a quarterback, or will they be the fourth team to select a quarterback?
They'll probably want to trade up just so they can get the higher-ranked player on their board. But let's say if they have them on their horizontal board side by side, if they have them graded similarly, they'll be fine with staying at 4, just because if you have them in a direct order side by side, there's no reason to trade up and give that extra draft capital for the same player that you feel as if has a similar grade. So if I had to guess, I still think they would trade up to 3 just so they can get their preference of the third or the fourth option, whichever one is on the board. But if they have them graded similarly, they'll probably just stay at 4.
How aggressively is Arizona shopping that third pick?
Very, very aggressively. There's a lot of teams keeping an eye on what happens with Houston at 2, just because that could send the draft in a tailspin. Just because if they go Will Anderson, now you're talking about C.J. Stroud being available at 3. Now I could see a lot of teams calling up Arizona to trade up to that third spot. I could see the Raiders, the Titans, the Vikings potentially. There's so many different teams that want to trade up for a quarterback potentially. Now Arizona can entertain a lot of different offers.
Last one for me, Jordan. From a local angle, I don't think we'll hear names maybe called in round 1 or round 2, but it does seem like in the middle-ish rounds, you could see a couple Purdue Boilermakers come off the board. So I'll throw 4 names at you, and if any of them stand out to you, feel free. Aiden O'Connell, Payne Durham, Charlie Jones at wideout, and then on the defensive side of the ball, I know a lot of people like the measurables of Corey Trice at corner.
Yeah, there's a lot of fans of Aiden O'Connell out there, and he was a player that I got to see out in Las Vegas at the East-West Shrine Bowl, and he had a really good week. And you talk to a lot of scouts of who's going to be that mid-round quarterback that a lot of teams like, and Aiden O'Connell's name has come up quite a bit. Me and Matt Miller just released a piece yesterday. We had a quarterback-only mock draft, and we had him going in the 5th round, I believe it was, to the Detroit Lions, which would be a really good spot for him. So Aiden O'Connell is definitely a name to keep an eye on, but Charlie Jones is another that a lot of people like in that 4th or 5th round range.
Jordan, you are a product, if I'm not mistaken, of North Carolina Central University, one of the HBCUs. Yes, the Colts have had a lot of success in guys coming from historically black colleges, smaller schools. Antoine Bethea comes to mind. Shaquille Leonard comes to mind. So I thought I would ask you this. Give me the player in this year's draft, if there is one, from an HBCU that is coming from a small school that somebody's going to get themselves a darn good football player that people might have slept on because they were out of a small school.
You brought back some flashbacks when you said Shaquille Leonard. I actually coached against him when I was coaching in college. A terrific player. I knew he was going to translate really well to the NFL level. But one player I would recommend that I think is going to be really good on the next level, his name is Aubrey Miller. He's a linebacker from Jackson State. He originally started his career at Missouri. He wanted a bigger role, wanted to go somewhere to where he could have an expanded role, and that's exactly what he was able to do at Jackson State. SWAC Defensive Player of the Year last year. Only 6 foot, 225 pounds, so he's a little bit undersized, but he fits that modern-day mold of having those smaller linebackers that can really run. He's good in coverage. He's a really good blitzer, but where he's going to make his most impact early on is on special teams. He's going to be a core 4 special teams player, very physical at the point of attack. So he's one that I think is going to be a really good role player on the next level.
Jordan, awesome stuff, man. Will you be in Kansas City at all? Should we be looking for you on the various ESPN networks coming up here next week?
Yes, sir. You'll find me on there.
Love it. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you, guys, as always.
That's Jordan Reid, ESPN draft analyst, right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. Jake, looks like we just got the announcement. Nothing going on at the track today?
That's my understanding, is that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, I don't know if if it will be rescheduled, but weather today, the session for today, the test, not going to happen. Which, I mean, it was It's going to rain all day, right? Or at least until late into the afternoon.
So they were able to get over 3,500 laps in from the 33 cars out there, and then we just had the announcement as of the 34th entry. And Jake, I know you touched on this earlier, but if you don't mind, R.C. Anderson in that 34th entry.
Correct. R.C. Anderson and Able Motorsports. So that will, and yesterday, Beth Peretta announcing that Simona Di Silvestro, they will not be attempting the Indy 500. So right now at 34, R.C. Anderson and Able Motorsports would be entry and driver combination number 34. So assuming that they get out and get up to speed during the course of the practice. They were not at the test. They were the only one that was not there yesterday, but everybody went out. Rookie orientation was passed by those rookies that were eligible. Veteran refresher as well. Scott Dixon, Joseph Newgarden, the fastest yesterday. So there is no makeup date, I'm told, for the test. So it was a one-day test and on to Barber Motorsports.
So the Tuesday after the Grand Prix, right? That's the next time we'll get on the oval?
Correct.
So nothing until mid-May. I did want to sneak this in. I don't know if those saw, but we mentioned a little bit yesterday just the lack of portal traction for Indiana when it comes to particularly guards and wings. Cormac Ryan out of Notre Dame, who I think was a rumored name in Bloomington, he committed to North Carolina. Jake, it's a bit shocking to me considering the amount of playing time and the NIL aspect to it and the year Jalen Hood-Schifino had, that Indiana is not getting a little bit more on the guard-wing portal front.
Got this text yesterday, Kevin, along those lines. Jake, I'm a longtime listener. Big fan of you and Kevin. Catching up on the show today. You guys are way too harsh on Hoosier fans. We can only cheer for what we're given. We're the flagship program in the state. We need the flagship radio show to treat us as such. Later went on to say, I believe we both love IU and want it to get back to greatness. I just think we have different views on how to get it to that point. My response was simple, and that is...
Boy, that was a hell of a text.
Yeah, here's what I said back. No one was a bigger IU fan than I growing up. However, the reality is that at some point, you look at Indiana and you say over the last 20 years, they have been on the same level of competitiveness as Minnesota and Iowa State. Statistically, that is accurate. And there's a long list of names of players that were going to be the one that we're going to put it over the top and put them back in the category of the perennial Kansas, North Carolina Duke. You know, Romeo Langford, James Blackman Jr., Thomas Bryant, Tamar Bates, Hunter Perea. The list goes on and on, right? To objectively opine on it is to say that Indiana lost off of their roster from this past season a key player off the bench in Tamar Bates, a consensus All-American in Trace Jackson Davis, a potential lottery pick at guard in Jalen Hood-Schifino, a very valuable upperclassman in Race Thompson in the rotation. And so far, the replacement has been, sure, a former top 10 recruit who averaged 15 minutes a game because a coach who is very well respected and has been to a Final Four said he was too lazy. So I think it's fair to say that leads you with concern for next season.
Let's kick some ass.
Objectively speaking.
3-1 against Purdue, right? For Coach Mike Wilson on the front. Yeah, I think it's well said. And, Jake, you and I have just grew up in different eras in terms of IU basketball. I mean, if you look at when do you start becoming even a little bit of a fan? 7 years old?
Yeah.
Like kindergarten?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you take Kevin Bowen in kindergarten, IU's been a top 3 seed in the tournament one time.
Well,
since
that's what
kindergarten.
And I said in this discussion,
and I'm 33.
I'm like, look, to someone under 40, they have to hold on to what their dad tells them about IU to think of it as elite. I mean, I travel. Well,
especially to think about recruits now, Jake. I mean, if you are a college recruit, if you are Flory Badunga, the year Flory Badunga was born, how many Sweet 16s has IU made in Flory Badunga's lifetime?
Right.
2?
I mean, Kevin, I've been to all parts of this country and some parts of Arkansas. And for years, when I would say I was from Indiana, the first thing people would say was like, oh, man, what about like Bobby Knight and the Hoosiers? Or I remember, and it was upper echelon stuff. And now, people ask about the Colts or Peyton Manning or Andrew Luck or, but at the same time, in the NFL, the nature of the beast, but I know that it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow. I get it. But, like when I went to the Kansas game, my buddy Corey Lagerstrom, his son is a freshman at Kansas. And when I said I'm from Indiana, he's like, don't they have they got the two guys with the hyphenated names, right? And he's like a diehard KU basketball fan. But to him, Indiana is Minnesota or Missouri. You know what I mean?
Good Jimmy's on the line, Mark. Good Jimmy. What's up, man? Happy Friday.
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. Long time no talk. How you guys doing?
You're swell, man. How are you?
I know it's weird not seeing you at Pacer games, Jimmy, now that the year's over with.
Yeah, it is weird, and a little old now at Gamebridge. You guys know I also worked at Gamebridge, so thankfully they need to give me a suite so I can live there. And that'd be nice. But hey, two things for you guys real quick. One, I just wanted to say that as a Tier 1 listener of your show, if you guys ever have I know you have the morning show, but if you ever have a remote or any thing where you have listeners come by, I'll be front and center. So,
hey, Carb Day, Jimmy. I need you there. We might have to throw a couple back if you don't mind.
Awesome. I love that. And I'd always take Jake up on the PBR, that's for sure.
There you go. Hell yeah.
But, hey, I just wanted to ask you guys a draft question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you both, what, in terms of Colts quarterback, I told JMV this the other day, I think I like Levis more than Richardson, only because I don't think the Colts have time to wait to see how Richardson can develop. I love his athleticism, obviously, but I just want to get your guys' take on that. And thanks for always taking my call. Kevin, your invitation to Sagamore is coming soon. So
I love that.
Have a great weekend. Take care, my friend.
I love it. Jimmy and I are always, every Sunday, Jimmy and I share a few texts about the latest PGA Tour developments. By the way, a great TV rating for them with the final round of the Heritage last week. Boy, the whole debate on high floor, high ceiling, the risk factor in that, I think is a really interesting one. Maybe it was Mark that brought this up a few weeks ago. You look at the AFC and the quarterback picture right now, I can totally understand the people that say, if you just get another guy, you're going to get lost in the shuffle in the AFC. You need to try and get the rare talent, the guy you can't teach these traits. You've got to get kind of a unicorn type if you want to compete in this conference for years to come, because it's so loaded at quarterback. So I can hear that out, and then I can hear kind of Jimmy's. It sounded like that was a little bit more Jimmy's side of, you want a little bit of a higher floor. You just need to get back to winning the division, those sorts of things. So I hear both sides of it. I asked Jordan Reid the question a few minutes ago. What are the traits, what are the flaws of Levis and Richardson, and what can you teach? To me, I think it's a little harder to teach accuracy. And I know that Richardson's accuracy numbers maybe aren't as ugly as the 54% on his resume that he had at Florida last year, but that to me is the harder one to teach. So I'd probably side with Levis. As you guys have heard me say, not too much of a strong conviction. I got more conviction than Shane Steichen.
I think the Colts, by kicking the can not once but twice with the short gap Band-Aid veteran and swinging and missing on which veteran they wanted to be their multi-year guy in Carson Wentz, they have painted themselves into a corner where they have the least margin for error on ceiling versus floor. And as a result of that, while I know it's a dangerous precedent, and I understand, Kevin, that you disagree with this approach, I'm not saying that it's the approach that I prefer, but I think the Colts have put themselves in position to where they have to go with the least risk. Anthony Richardson might be the best reward, but I think he comes with the higher risk. And I think the Colts have spent on Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, they have spent their risk cards, and they busted both times. So they have to go with the safest pick.
Is there that big a separation in safety with Levis versus Richardson?
No, but there also is a razor-thin margin between the level that the Colts can be flexible in that area. And so, therefore, I go with Levis.
Yeah, I mean, again, there are people that think Levis's flaws from a processing standpoint, those are hard to correct because he's also 4 years older than Richardson?
Old dog, new tricks. Totally get it.
And he was at Kentucky, which isn't exactly a football school that most people associate with.
But he was playing against some pretty darn good defenses.
Didn't have the best
Same
year
defenses that Richardson was playing against, though.
That's true.
Yeah, it's, again, all of these discussions, what makes it so difficult and such a fascinating debate. So.
I think they should just let the clock tick and then panic and take a 27-year-old guy like Brandon Weeden like the Browns did. You remember that year?
Utter disaster. Just peak Browns. Absolutely peak Browns. All right. Again, no oval test today due to Mother Nature. Let's lead off the morning check down. Looking at the NBA last night.
The morning check down. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
NBA playoffs, James Harden was ejected against the Brooklyn Nets for a flagrant 2 foul, so he was shown the sidelines. He got to go to the locker room and watch his team take a 3-love advantage over Brooklyn in the Eastern Conference first-round playoffs. 102-97 last night, Philadelphia with the win. Also, last night, Golden State. I'm telling you, that was the most predictable thing ever. I don't know why. You could just tell that Golden State was going to do that against Sacramento, but that's exactly what they did. Taking control behind 36 from Steph Curry, offsetting 26 from De'Aaron Fox. Warriors over the Kings, 114-97. That makes that series 2-1. And also 2-1, the Phoenix Suns and the LA Clippers. Suns last night, 129-124. Phoenix now leads that series 2-1. Devin Booker with 45 for Phoenix.
How about Norman Powell, 42? The obscurity of that 42 points. That will happen there. No Kawhi Leonard, of course, last night. Again, tonight, Boston taking on Atlanta, New York, and Cleveland, Denver, and Minnesota.
Do you have any recollection of Norman Powell at UCLA?
No, not a lot. I feel like that was a bad UCLA era, wasn't it, too?
Yeah, I got no recollection of that.
MLB yesterday, not a whole lot of action. The Reds continue to be the Reds. They
Are you going
lose
to abandon
4-3.
being a Reds fan? Are you going to abandon following this team?
I'm going to love playing this till
7,300. That was the attendance on Monday for the Reds. Granted, the weather did look like this. Indians lose to Memphis. That's 3 straight. All those games down there. Indianapolis has lost this week, and the Cubs lost yesterday to the Dodgers.
Oh, the swoosh happened, and I don't know what else there is to talk about. Joseph Newgarden, we mentioned that. Scott Dixon fastest yesterday. And the test session, by the way, at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, no session today. As you
sounds like you found something perfectly to talk about. The swoosh was required.
I just noticed that you're wearing a T-shirt that says "Girl Dad officially outnumbered."
I am wearing a T-shirt. Yep. I'm not like Kevin. I don't come to work nude.
Excuse me?
Yeah. You heard me.
It was not nude.
Yeah, from the top up you were.
Well, I don't think it's full nude.
That was a. You know what was on yesterday, and I don't know if this was new or if they're rehash or if it's new.
We go from nude to what was on TV yesterday.
But I managed to find a Beavis and Butthead marathon, and
those are new probably.
They're working at Burger World, and it said that they can refuse service to any customer that creates a hostile environment. And like every customer that came in, Butthead's like, this is making me feel hostile. so that's what Kevin was doing. He was creating a I'm like refusing.
I can't tell you the last time I have watched Beavis and Butthead.
I have a buddy who is a doctor.
Hey, Boo, come sit on Dad's lap. Let's watch Beavis and Butthead.
I have a buddy that's a doctor, and he's listed in my phone as Butthead because for 30 years now,
hope it's not Mottman.
We have only had conversations with each other on the telephone where we're both Butthead. And like Shannon's like, what are you doing? Like, I'm planning a trip. So we're taking a flight. We'll like take a flight, dude. Like the whole conversation.
Just because neither of you can do a Beavis impression.
I don't. Yeah, Beavis sucks. We're both very mature.
Yeah, some high end maturation from our 50-year-old here.
Can you imagine the guy's a doctor? There was one time where we're on the phone and he's like, I gotta go, dude. There's like a patient here. I'm like, okay, my bad.
Freebie Friday for the pop quiz. Jiffy Lube oil change.
You're my doctor. Why is your shirt on top of your head?
Up for grabs. We will do that next.
Guys.
Online at 1075thefan.com. Have you studied? Can you handle the pressure? Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Pop Quiz with Kevin and Query. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
Now, it's going to be hard for me if I'm asked to read question number 4.
Why is your computer not working again?
To not giggle out loud. No.
Oh.
My computer works.
You said in a break that your computer went rogue on you.
Oh, it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. My chipmunk was taking a smoke break, but it works now.
You think this is doable?
Oh, yeah. It's a freebie Friday in addition to that.
Didn't realize number 2 was like that accomplished. It's an assistant with Penny Hardaway, right?
Really?
I thought so.
A native of South Dakota.
All right, it's time for the Pop Quiz, 317-239-1070. It's a freebie Friday, so no matter what, you're going home with a Jiffy Lube oil change. Jake, a number 1 through 8.
2.
Mark.
Matt.
What's up, Matt?
Hey, how you doing?
Matt, we're doing great. You got any weekend plans?
Baseball all weekend.
Playing or coaching or watching?
Coaching and watching.
Now, what grade or age do you coach?
High school.
Oh, okay. So you at least don't now. Do you still have parents that are out of their minds, or have they come to reality by the time their kids are in high school?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you care to share where the high school is after saying that?
Avon.
Oh, nice. How are the Orioles this year?
Looking good.
Did you ever think about changing the Oriole hat to the cute fella of the Baltimore Orioles?
That is not my control, and no.
Okay. Fair enough.
Direct to the point here.
Quick and easy. I like that.
Matt, are you like a pitching coach, third base coach, manager? What are your specific duties?
Assistant coach.
Okay. Matt, who is your favorite baseball player of all time?
Don Mattingly.
Oh, okay. Dandy Don. Are you an Evansville native, or are you...
No, Mitchell.
Oh, no kidding. Okay. So is that dumb question? Is that Mitchell High School?
Yes.
I didn't know if it was into a consolidated high school. And then collegiately, you attended where?
Arizona.
Oh, wow.
Did you play baseball there?
No, I was in the military.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, cool.
Good for you. If there's one rule in high school baseball you'd like to change, what is it?
I don't have any issues with any of the rules.
Boy, he's venturing to get some good calls.
No parental advice. That would be mine.
This weekend. All right, Matt, thanks for calling in, and congrats early. We'll see if you can go 5 for 5. Jake, I guess I'll go with 4, so you want to lead off?
All right, here we go. Question number 1. Entering play today, Matt. Who leads the major leagues in home runs? Is it Patrick Wisdom, Rafael Devers, Pete Alonso, or Max Muncy?
Max Muncy.
You sure?
There's an F1 driver that ran the Indy 500 who is apparently now dating Taylor Swift that probably is a fan of this player.
Ooh, that don't help me at all.
This guy is like an insane worker-outer during the home run derby. It's a little much watching him do this each year.
Alonso?
Was there a Quentin Nelson Taylor Swift rumor that was quickly debunked?
What's that?
Quentin Nelson Taylor Swift rumor.
Oh,
that
really?
Was quickly
Quentin
debunked.
Nelson?
Yeah. Saw it out there for a while. Nick Nurse just got canned by the Raptors. All right, congrats to former Pacer Malcolm Brogdon, the NBA Sixth Man of the Year. Matt, Brogdon is just the second player in NBA history to win Rookie of the Year and Sixth Man of the Year. Who was the first? A, Mike Miller, B, Bill Walton, C, Danny Manning, or D, Corliss Williamson?
Danny Manning?
I bet Corliss Williamson could have played in the NFL.
The Big Nasty? That was his nickname.
What'd you say, Matt?
Danny Manning.
Okay, question number 3. Malcolm Brogdon is the 4th member of the Boston Celtics to be named Sixth Man of the Year. Only one franchise has claimed the award 5 times, which is interesting because historically this franchise sucks. Is it Phoenix, Dallas, the Knicks, or the Clippers?
Clippers.
Okay.
All right, number 4 here. Name the only Indiana Pacer, Matt, to be named Sixth Man of the Year. You okay?
Yeah.
A. DeMontis Sabonis, B. Antonio Davis, C. Detlef Schrempf, or D. Eddie Johnson?
Antonio Davis.
Matt doesn't mess around here. Matt's sending the runners constantly.
That's right. Matt, how often when you're doing like the whole like rub the arms and then like over the face and touch the nose and all that on the base pass, how much of that stuff is complete malarkey and means nothing?
Probably 90% of it.
Okay. Question 5 for you, Matt. On this day in 2012, Philip Humber of the Chicago White Sox threw the 21st perfect game in Major League Baseball history. What's that?
Silent H, Umber.
Oh, Umber, sorry. There'd be 2 more perfect games thrown during the 2012 season. There has not been one since. Felix Hernandez threw the last Major League perfect game on August 15th of 2012. Who threw the perfecto in between Umber and King Felix? Was it Roy Halladay, Matt Cain, Dallas Braden, or Mark Burley?
2012, Matt Cain.
Matt, do you have any good dugout lingo that you like? Obviously generic ones like good eye, but anything that the bench can shout out to members of the field that you really enjoy. Baseball lingo fascinates me.
Anytime they strike him out with a fastball, we like to say gas him up and then give him an engine sound.
Oh, can I hear the engine sound?
That.
What's the engin sound?
Mark could probably cue one up.
Run.
Now,
one more time there, Matt. That was great.
That's enough.
Now,
that was great.
Is it hard to do that with sunflower seeds in your mouth?
Little bit, yeah.
Now that engine, hopefully that doesn't sound like an engine maybe we see in the final Sunday of May, but nonetheless, that was very impressive by
I feel
Matt.
like even still in high school, we should do, we want a pitcher, not a belly itcher. That would really get in their heads.
We don't do that so much.
My wife played softball way back in the day, and she still has many memories of their chants, and they were a bit dicey.
How about hey, batter, batter? Do they still do that? Hey, batter, batter, batter?
No, sir.
Okay. Pete Alonso was correct for question number 1, by the way. Fernando Alonso reportedly now dating Taylor Swift.
I'm going to text Maddie what one of those chants were. Will you take it from here?
Sure. Mike Miller was actually the answer for question number 2. He was Rookie of the Year in 2001. He was the 6th man in 2006. Matt, hang on the line, though. It's a freebie Friday. Clippers correct for question number 3. Matt Cain was correct for question number 5. And question number 4, the only Indiana Pacer to be named 6th man of the year. I always giggle when I see his name. He's a great guy, by the way. 1994 Sega Genesis NBA 94. I think that was the name of the game. We were playing that game one night at Scott McConnell's house, and it had a new feature in that game with the new technology of Sega that included player injury. And my buddy Mike Hillary was playing as the Sonics, I think, is who Schrempf was with on that game. And it had Detlef Schrempf went down in the lane in the video game, to which Hillary simply yelled out, "Ach, mein Enkelin!" and every time I hear Detlef Schrempf's name, I laugh about it. And we actually had him on the old radio show I did.
I was wondering why you're getting so giddy.
We had Detlef Schrempf say on air, "Ach, mein Enkelin," and then we had him on like a year later. He's now he's a spokesperson for seafood, for the seafood industry. We had him on like a year later, and we're like, joining us back on the program. It's a pleasure to have Detlef Schrempf. Detlef, how are you? And he started the interview with, "Ach, mein Enkelin." So anytime I see it, I giggle. Always makes me laugh.
Maddie has responded very promptly here. I want to make sure that I do this due diligent, or do it.
Now, this is when she
correctly. It might have been kickball. I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe it was softball. I don't think this would fly today. Welcome to your cemetery. Bum 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 bum. Woo! This is where you will be buried. Bum 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 bum. Woo! If you think you're gonna win, boom, 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 turn around and think again, bum, 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 bum.
Well, that's terrifyingly intimidating. That would rattle any team, wouldn't it?
Now, our parents calling in and saying, "No, I can't believe they shouted that when Susie came up to bat."
That's right.
I think it's rather creative.
It's not bad.
I would like to think that would still fly today. That was a very effective text. That was good text work by her to
got some
detail that out there.
Breaking NBA news: the Raptors have fired Nick Nurse.
Well, where have you been, Mark?
Mark,
I'm not paying attention.
Do you know Kennedy was shot?
Which one?
Nate Bjorkgren going to be hired?
That's a good question. That was one of his guys, right?
OG Anunoby now to the Pacers?
You love that OG Anunoby
Better
Pacers
chance
connection, man.
Anunoby to the Pacers or Nate Bjorkgren to head coach of the Raptors?
Well, here's the thing. You'll go with the first because we at least know that the president of the Pacers has basically confirmed that there was interest, right? Not necessarily in so many words, but he kind of did.
It's just about the readiness and the togetherness. They have a very high care factor.
Did Nate Bjorkgren get a raw deal from having to coach during the COVID year?
A little bit. Although I think players thought he was weird.
Mark, one more time on that clip. I think it's so.
Players thought he was weird.
They have a very high care factor. It's just about the readiness and the togetherness.
Mm-hmm.
It's always about the readiness and the togetherness.
That one's for Mr. Gilmore right there. All right, we'll do it one final time here to end the week. One of the best things that's happened here in Indianapolis is the arrival of QC Kinetics. Their amazing regenerative medicine treatments have helped so many people with lasting joint pain relief with no surgery, no drugs, and no downtime. It's Kevin Bowen, and the demand for QC treatments is so strong, they opened up another clinic. This one is up in Carmel while continuing the treatment locations in Eagle Highlands and Greenwood. QC Kinetics is a game changer. They are the nation's
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I'm going to be walking around today at like 4 in the afternoon.
Welcome to your cemetery. Boom, boom. Boom, boom. This is where you will be buried. Boom, boom.
Did you ever do...
Boom, boom. Woo!
Did you ever do walk up the stairs and the stairs will walk up you?
Oh, no.
Pray to the dead and the dead will pray. Scotty, am I the only one here? Is this a Washington Township thing? Pray
with the
to
new,
the dead and the dead will pray to you. You never did it as a kid, like try to scare people like by the campfire?
If they had those new timing rules in, that'd take 7 batters to get through all of that.
That's true.
You got a couple verses
there.
That
is true.
On that end. Shout out to the Indy Fuel. Their playoffs start tonight. They got Toledo.
Do it with me. Do it with me. Let's go. Fuel. Hell yeah.
Tuesday and Thursday next week, home games for them at the Coliseum. Mark, you said Eric's been hanging in there?
He's still there.
Eric, what's up, man? Happy Friday.
Hey, guys. I want to talk about the Colts quarterbacks that they're looking at.
Eric, where have you been, man? I haven't talked to you forever. It's good to hear your voice. Everything going all right?
Everything's good. Man, you're on early now. It's kind of hard for me a little bit, but I'm about to get into it.
All right. Well, I apprate it. All right. So go ahead with your quarterback question.
It's hard for Jake, too, Eric, to be fully
How do you think I feel? Yeah.
Well, hey. Good afternoon.
Oh, no, Eric, we're losing you. Hang on. Go back to where you were standing 30 seconds ago and ask your quarterback question.
Okay. You hear me?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, I like Levis a lot more than Richardson, but I'll say this: as the months have gone on, I've kind of watched and I've kind of looked, at the numbers, and they all three play in the same conference: Levis, Richardson, and Hooker. And when you look at Hooker, I know he's a couple years older, but he was number one in every.
No, hold on, Eric. We lost you, but I got the point here on Hooker. I don't disagree that Hooker has had an out, and thank you. It's good to hear from you. I don't disagree about Hooker. The problem is, Kevin, I just think the one issue for Hooker is the fact that he is older and he's coming off the injury, which, number one, gives you a little bit of question, but number two, and more importantly, the injury means the potential of another year off the clock, and by the time he's healthy and ingrained and ready to go, he's already older than everybody else, and that would be the one question about him. Somebody's going to take a flyer on him, though.
Point this out about Hooker. I don't think there's a quarterback in the draft that had better pass and run production than him. I think he, especially in the SEC, I think he had it at the highest level. Plus, you like the fact that he transferred up. I mean, Virginia Tech to Tennessee, that is an upward transfer, and he excelled. I think, honestly, Jake, more than age and injury, you talk to people around the NFL, there is legit worry about the system he's coming from. And, again, there are some collegiate rules that are just different than the NFL rules from a hash mark standpoint and those things. It can get really complicated trying to explain it, but they don't feel like Hooker has, just made a lot of NFL type of reads and those sorts of things. And it's a bit gimmicky. I know there's various college offenses that follow a similar script, but Tennessee's is probably to the most severe. So to me, that's the biggest worry with Hooker on that end. How awful is this weather for Little 500 weekend?
Oh, is that this weekend?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever go, my time in Bloomington as a student and my high school years, I've never been to Little 5.
Really? Yeah, my roommate actually rode in at senior year.
Scotty, did you go to Little 5? He went all 4 years, okay.
I broadcasted junior year, and then senior year, I guess I was so bad junior year, they didn't have me back senior year. But no, I watched my roommate, and honestly, the weather was like this. It was awful.
That guy kept making 420 jokes. I don't want him back next year.
That's right. Who won, do you remember, Kevin?
Probably Cutters. Yeah, I think Cutters won a lot. Black Key Bowls, were they around when you were there?
No.
I think they've been kind of another Cutters-type team.
Won.
Fiji was always good. Phi-Psi always had a good team. But yeah, girls race today, boys race tomorrow down in Bloomington. I was shocked that I had 15 of the 18 students actually show up to class yesterday. You imagine 80 degrees on Thursday at Little 5?
Little 5 was, I came back my freshman year of college when I was at Kansas, I drove with a kid from Chicago, and we drove to go to Little Five. And, I mean, I just remember being like, this is a whole different element. Whole different experience.
Yeah, you guys are shotgunning Pedialyte on your way there to get ready for the weekend.
Yeah, it was something else. Little Five was fun, though.
So nothing this afternoon for you with this
no
Mother Nature cancellation over the track?
Laundry and homework. Got a couple of loose end final papers to write, a couple of labs to do. So this gives me a chance to do it because the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Open Test Day number 2 washed out officially. That announcement coming about 20 minutes ago. It will not be made up. So for the NTT IndyCar Series, it is, in the words of Bill Belichick, now on to Birmingham. So on to Barber Motorsports Park.
Shout out to my roommate, Chris Hotwagner, who just threw a text. Thank you for not sharing our 28th place finish that year.
Wow.
In Little Five.
Out of how many?
Definitely northward of 30.
29.
Yeah. It was really cool, though, to watch them, and obviously at various degrees of teams and their commitment level to that. Not to,
I mean, you would see
Chris's
guys
commitment.
riding their bikes in the middle of November, like through the hills. I mean,
on like
training
46,
and,
and then their spring break trips are around.
Yeah, you're right.
Biking,
training, and doing the whole deal.
For
right?
that, yeah. Again, going to be a little chillier this weekend, so the outdoor activities might be limited, really compared to what we had last week. And thank you to Chuck Pagano and Jordan Reid, along with Greg Rakestraw. The podcast will be up. Mark Tom Allen at 7:30 Monday morning.
Correct. Yep.
Relentless.
Mm-hmm. Well, you talk about energy to start the week. Tom Allen will bring it there. And, of course, the draft. This time next week, we'll know who that pick is. Everybody have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in all week.